Chapter 1216. Chu-Mu, what are you doing? In the Five Elements Sword Sect, Deputy Sect Master Bai Cheong frowned as he looked at the Galaxy Genius list in the sky. Chu-Mu's ranking dropped from the 1st place to the 11th place. Not long after, it dropped to the 16th place. Now, it had dropped all the way to the 51st place. At this moment, his name jumped again, dropping down to the 56th place. Senior Brother Chu's ranking dropped again. This is the 4th time. Why does it keep dropping? This is so disappointing. As the saying went, things should not happen more than 3 times. However, Chu-Mu's ranking dropped for the 4th time. This inevitably disappointed those who had high hopes for him. What's going on? In the sky-shaking peak, Jiangbei was also muttering to himself. The disciples of the sky-shaking peak were the same. In the beginning, they were envied by many people. But now, there were already a lot of rumors about them. It was nothing more than mocking them. That kind of feeling was indeed unpleasant. Chu-Mu did not mind. The threats and disdain of others would not embarrass him. After returning to his wooden house, he checked the Galaxy Genius list of the Night Dark Tribe and found that his ranking had dropped to the 56th place. Since he had entered the Sky Azure virtual world, a full day had passed. It was now the 2nd night, and there were already 55 people ahead of him. There were at least 2,000 genius points. 1,000 genius points could be obtained for comprehending sword intent. 1,000 genius points could be obtained for comprehending a type of heaven and earth power. 1,000 genius points could also be obtained for reaching the 1st sky realm. At this moment, Zhu Tiantong, who was at the top of the list, had obtained 4,000 genius points. Qin Gang, who was at the 2nd place, also had 4,000 genius points. As for Yang Xian, who was at the 3rd place, he had 3,000 genius points. It seemed that Zhu Tiantong and Chen Gang had both reached the 1st sky realm, comprehended sword intent, and comprehended a type of heaven and earth power. There was no doubt that Zhu Tiantong, Chen Gang, and the others were talented. In addition, there were members of the Night Netherhall who had hunted void beasts and offered a portion of void chi to them. Unknowingly, the 2 of them had saved time from hunting void beasts, which could be used to comprehend the power of heaven and earth and so on. Chu-Mu was different. He was a lone traveler. He had to hunt and obtain all the fo chi. He also had to use a portion of it to recover from his injuries and recover his strength. He did not have much time to comprehend it properly. The 10th place also had 3,000 talent points, while the 11th place had 2,000. With a faint smile, Chu-Mu started cultivating in the wooden hut. Primary body transformation technique. Starting from the 1st movement, after the 1st movement was completed, the 2nd movement would be immediately carried on. There was no pause. The heat within the body continued to gather, becoming stronger and stronger. After the 6th movement was completed, he entered the 7th movement, then the 8th movement, and then the 9th movement. The 9th movement was the last movement. The heat within the body had already become very strong. Chu-Mu could vaguely hear the sound of a surging tide reverberating within his body. The heat continued to wash over him, causing his body to strengthen bit by bit, becoming more and more tyrannical. After fixing the 9th movement for half an hour, Chu-Mu's skin turned red, like a cooked prawn. Steam rose from his body, rising in spirals. He only felt as if his entire body was about to burn, and his consciousness gradually became dazed. There was an explosion. It was as if a terrifying flame had exploded within his body, impacting his entire body. His bones emitted explosive sounds, and a surge of power emerged from the depths of his body. In the blink of an eye, it enveloped his entire body. The almost burning high temperature quickly retreated, replaced by a burst of coldness. A powerful force surged within his body. His every move was accompanied by bursts of cracking sounds, and his fists whistled like the wind. Body transformation technique has reached the 1st heavenly layer. obtained 1,000 talent points. A fleeting voice sounded in his mind. On the Galaxy Genius list, the talent points behind Chu Mu's name changed from 1,000 to 2,000. However, his ranking did not change. He was still ranked 56th. This was just the beginning. After moving his arms and legs, he felt that the strength of 10,000 kilograms after the breakthrough was completely different from that of 9,999 kilograms. Although there was only a difference of 1 kilogram in terms of numbers, they were two different realms. Right now, he felt that he could unleash the full potential of his strength. If he were to encounter another elite crimson-eyed wolf, he would only need half the time to kill it. Of course, if it were other genius swordsmen, they might not be able to kill an elite red-eyed wolf with the strength of 10,000 kilograms. This was the gap between the talent and the use of strength. There were more than 30,000 geniuses in the entire Dark Knight tribe. In terms of the use of strength, if Chu Mu said he was the second, no one could claim to be the first. Sitting cross-legged on the wooden bed, he cleared his mind. After calming his mind and concentrating, he mobilized the internal qi in his body through the route of the primary qi training formula. The route of the primary qi training formula was relatively simple and easy to master. Chu Mu's internal qi had also reached the extreme. The internal qi kept running in his meridians over and over again. After each cycle, it seemed to be purified a little bit. It took about 100 breaths for each cycle. After the 36th cycle, the internal qi had been purified 36 times, which had reached the extreme that it could reach now. The internal qi expanded and contracted in an instant. Then it expanded again and exploded. Chu Mu felt that his spirit and mind were also soaring. The internal qi in his meridians was reorganized. A new feeling arose spontaneously. Your qi training level has reached the first heaven. You have gained 1,000 talent points. The ethereal voice sounded again. After Chu Mu's name, the talent points changed to 3,000. Then his name began to flash and surged up rapidly, like a hot knife through butter. It surpassed the names one after another. When it surpassed the 16th place, it stopped, because the talent points after the names in front of him had also reached 3,000. Chu Mu was breaking through, and so were the others. The only difference was when and where they broke through. From the 56th place to the 16th place, an increase of 40 places was very shocking. Good boy, are you finally going to fight back? White Sky smiled when he saw the change in the Galaxy Genius list. The Peak Master's ranking has increased. He has suddenly risen to the 16th place. The disciples of the Zhantian Peak were very happy. Oh, he actually rose to the 16th place. He's only the 16th place. He didn't even enter the top 10. Xiao Minglei's expression abruptly changed. His face was gloomy. His talent points were only 2,000 points, and he was instantly surpassed by Chu Mu. This meant that in a short span of 4 to 6 hours, Chu Mu's training qi and body training had both reached the first layer of sky, surpassing him again. Was there no hope for revenge now? He actually broke through. But this is more fun, isn't it? Yang Xian sneered when he noticed this. If he killed someone before breaking through, he wouldn't suffer any losses other than dying once. However, if he killed someone after breaking through, his cultivation level would drop by the first heaven. That would be a great loss. After reaching the first heaven of qi training level, the amount of inner qi would only increase a little. However, the quality of inner qi would become much purer. Similarly, the power of inner qi would increase by several folds. Everyone was working hard. They were all geniuses, but there were also differences. Feeling the pure inner qi in his body, Chu Mu smiled. Cultivating both inner qi and inner qi, he had successfully broken through to the first heaven. His strength had increased, and he had also obtained 2,000 talent points. It was a good harvest. The black iron sword's sharpness isn't enough. I need a better sword. he thought to himself. However, he had no other choice now because a better sword would require a higher price. For example, the tungsten steel sword, which was one level higher than the black iron sword, would require 100 first grade void chi to purchase. The tungsten steel sword could easily cut open the fur of a first grade void beast and damage the fur of a second grade void beast. If it was a better sword, such as the Vajra sword, it would require more void chi. Void chi, void chi. Everything required the use of void chi. For the time being, he could not afford a better sword. If he wanted to increase his lethality, he would have to start from other aspects. After thinking for a while, Chu Mu's eyes flashed. He sat cross-legged and held the black iron sword, carefully feeling it. He wanted to comprehend the power of heaven and earth. Based on the current situation, comprehending the power of gold was undoubtedly the best. This was because the power of gold's sharpness would increase the sharpness of the sword and increase its lethality. With his strong comprehension ability and his extraordinary attainments in the power of gold, it would not be too difficult for him to comprehend it again. Gradually, Chu Mu's perception became more and more profound. There was a hint of sharpness that was faintly discernible in his spiritual world. The originally dark spiritual world lit up because he had comprehended the sword intent. The sword intent lingered in the center of the spiritual world. Now, not far from the edge of the sword intent, a faint light was faintly discernible. The power of gold had a sharpness that could cut through anything. All sorts of comprehensions appeared in his mind, becoming clearer and clearer. After an unknown amount of time, the light suddenly shone brightly. A faint golden color was born out of thin air beside the sword intent. It emitted a shocking sharpness. This sharpness was different from the sharpness of the sword intent. You have comprehended the power of gold. You have received 1,000 genius points. Amidst the fleeting voice, Chu Mu's genius points reached 4,000. On the Galaxy Genius ranking, the name that had stopped at the 16th place flickered once again and rushed into the top 10. It only stopped when it reached the 5th place. This was because the genius points of the 3rd and 4th place had increased from 3,000 to 4,000 not long ago. White Sky, this disciple of your sword sect named Chu Mu is not bad. His ranking actually rose so quickly. However, he is still inferior to my Knight Profound Sword Sect's disciple, not to mention Qin Gang and Zhu Tiantong. Even Yan Fei can trample him under her feet. Xiang Ye's voice sounded again. That voice carried a hint of ridicule. It was unknown how much the 5 Elements Sword Sect's disciples hated it. I've said it before. It's still early, White Sky replied indifferently. Chapter 12:17. What's going on? It's only been one night, and he's already ranked 5th? The geniuses were all dumbfounded when they saw the rankings on the Galaxy Genius list. They rubbed their eyes and looked again. It was real and not an illusion. After one night, the 6th and 7th place geniuses also had 4,000 points. However, they were slower than Chu Mu, so they were ranked behind him. It had to be said that the geniuses' abilities were gradually showing. As time passed, they showed more and more of their abilities and improved by leaps and bounds. That night was a night of rapid improvement. His chi cultivation had both reached the first sky, and he had also comprehended the gold force. His strength had increased by many times. If I encounter another elite red-eyed wolf now, it will be easier to kill it, Chu Mu thought to himself. The first rays of dawn appeared on the horizon, and the night gradually faded. Chu Mu got out of bed and practiced a beginner-level sword technique. He washed up and put on the shabby coarse linen clothes. He had no choice as he didn't have any other clothes. Although the coarse linen clothes smelled a little strange, he still had to wear them. He took out the illustration book of low-level void beasts and flipped it open. There were words and colorful pictures on each page, and each page recorded a void beast. The first page showed the red-eyed wolf with a simple introduction. The colorful pictures were vivid and lifelike. The second page also showed the red-eyed wolf, but it was an elite red-eyed wolf called the red-eyed battle wolf. The third page also showed the red-eyed wolf, but it was more majestic and ferocious than the red-eyed battle wolf. It was called the red-eyed wolf king. The low-level void beasts recorded in this book were the low-level void beasts in the wilderness around the Night Dark tribe. They weren't the low-level void beasts of the entire Azure Sky Void world. Therefore, there were only 10 types of grade, 1 void beasts, 8 types of grade, 2 void beasts, and 5 types of grade, 3 void beasts. Each type of void beast was divided into 3 levels: ordinary, elite, and king. The king level was the lowest, and its location was also indicated. For example, the red-eyed wolf king was in the Wolf Valley. I wonder how powerful the red-eyed wolf king is. Chumu's eyes flashed as his blood sped up and his battle intent surged. The scarlet-eyed battle wolves were very strong. As the king of the scarlet-eyed wolves, the scarlet-eyed wolf king should be much stronger. On the last page of the illustrated handbook, there was a simple map. It marked out the locations of low-level foe beasts outside the Night Dark tribe, such as the Wolf Valley, Tiger Stream, Eagle Cliff, and other places. After practicing the elementary sword technique and reading the illustration handbook of elementary void beasts, the sun had risen. After eating some rations and drinking some water, Chumu tidied himself up a little and left. At this time, many people had already left Dark Night tribe and entered the wilderness. Brother Chu, Yang Xian, has brought a group of people to the wooden bridge to stop you. Lin Yi stepped forward and said to Chumu, "Senior Brother Chu, let's fight our way out together." Jiang Fan's tone was filled with killing intent. Lin Haichao didn't say anything. He just stood aside and looked at Chumu. In the end, the disciples of the sword sect were still united. "No, senior brothers and junior brothers, this is a grudge between me and Xiao Minglei's group. I will resolve it. Don't forget that our main purpose in coming here is not to fight with the disciples of the Dark Knight sword sect." Chumu said straightforwardly, "If you suffer losses because of me, I will feel very guilty. Don't say anything more. This is my decision." Chumu immediately added, not allowing Lin Yi and the others to speak. After saying that, Chumu turned around and strode out of Dark Night tribe. He saw a group of people standing on the wooden bridge. Yang Xian was leisurely sitting on the edge of the bridge, looking at the clear water and the fish swimming in it. "Let's go." Lin Yi and the others quickly followed. As soon as Chumu walked out of the Dark Night tribe, Xiao Minglei said coldly, "I thought you were hiding in the Dark Night tribe and didn't dare to come out." His eyes were filled with killing intent. Including him, there were a total of 8 people from the Dark Night tribe. Each of them had at least reached the first sky and had mastered sword intent. They were all top 60 on the Galaxy Genius roll. All of them were either grinning or staring at Chumu with murderous intent. Chumu didn't answer and didn't stop. He just walked over. Yang Xian didn't raise his head, as if the fish in the water were more attractive. Even though he didn't raise his head, his voice was still heard. 51st grade Void Chi in 10 days. Do you agree? Give it to me, Chumu said lightly. Senior Brother Yang, this man is stubborn. He should be killed. Xiao Minglei's voice was filled with killing intent. Then let's kill him, Yang Xian said casually, as if he were going to decide Chumu's fate. Xiao Minglei unsheathed his sword, and the other 6 people also did the same. They either jumped in the air like an eagle pouncing on a rabbit, lowered their bodies like a snake, or circled around from the side. Junior Brother Chu, be careful! Lin Yi shouted. When he was about to unsheath his sword, Chumu moved. As the dust flew, his body shot out like an arrow leaving the bow. The black iron sword trembled, and the sword light was sharp. With the support of the sword intent, his speed increased rapidly. The sword was like a meteor from outer space. With a puff, the sword pierced through the throat of one of the people. Blood spurted out, but Chumu had already flashed past and slashed at the second person. The 6 swords came from different directions and from different angles. Each sword was very fierce and full of killing intent. Chu Mu changed from slashing to slashing, drawing an arc in front of him. The vibration power burst out, and the internal chi exploded. His strength increased greatly, and he immediately broke the 6 swords. Then he flicked his sword again. With a puff, the sharp sword cut through the neck of the second person and beheaded him. Even though he had reached the first heaven and his body was stronger, he still couldn't compare with a void beast, let alone block the sword. In just 3 short breaths, 2 people had died under Chu Mu's sword. Lin paused, his face full of shock. Yang Xian also looked up, and his face changed slightly. He quickly moved his feet to dodge and waved his sword to block. He was unscathed. After all, he had reached the first heaven of Qi cultivation, which was better than the first heaven of Qi cultivation alone. His use of power was also much better than the others. Facing the siege of 5 people, he was at ease. Under another fatal sword light, blood splattered. Chu Mu pierced the heart of the third person. Yang Xian paled at the sight. He slapped his palm against the edge of the wooden bridge and leaped up, unsheathing his sword. His sword gleamed with a fierce light as it streaked across the sky like a bolt of lightning. Yang Xian's sword was more threatening to Chu Mu than the previous 7 people combined. This sword was extremely fast. There was even lightning flickering on the sword. It was the power of lightning. With the power of lightning and sword intent, the sword was extremely fast. In an instant, it pierced towards Chu Mu like a bolt of lightning. Chu Mu's hair stood on end. He quickly retreated and slashed out with his sword. At the same time, the other 4 people cooperated with Yang Xian to block Chu Mu's escape route. The 2 swords collided. Under the huge force, Yang Xian trembled in the air and fell to the ground. Chu Mu also took 2 steps back. The 4 swords approached. He quickly moved his feet and twisted his body to dodge, but a sword still slashed his back. It was instantly torn apart and blood flowed out. Yang Xian, who was ranked 3rd, was indeed very powerful. After landing, Yang Xian stomped his feet and his strength exploded. With the support of his inner qi, the speed of his sword increased. It turned into a bolt of lightning and attacked again. The other 4 people also attacked with all their strength. They cooperated with Yang Xian to block all of Chu Mu's escape routes. "Attack!" Lin Yi shouted. He unsheathed his sword without hesitation and rushed out. Jiang Fan and Lin Haichao followed closely behind. Sword light burst out. Humans were intelligent and knew how to cooperate better. After all, virtual beasts could not compare to humans. Chu Mu had nowhere to dodge. He abruptly rushed forward and slashed his sword towards Yang Xian. Behind him, 4 sword lights followed. Lin Yi and the other 2 sword lights also rushed towards the 4 people. They wanted to kill Chu Mu, but did not want to be killed. The 4 people quickly withdrew their swords, turned around, and attacked Lin Yi and the other 2. After the threat behind him disappeared, Chu Mu secretly breathed a sigh of relief. The sword light became even fiercer. Yang Xian's swordsmanship was indeed very powerful. His use of power was also much better than Qiuminglei's. However, compared to Chu Mu, there was still a clear gap. Chu Mu and Yang Xian were both at the first heavenly layer of Qi cultivation. They had both mastered the elementary level of sword will and the power of heaven and earth. There was no difference in power. What they competed in was their attainments in swordsmanship, their use of power, and their grasp of timing. As a swordsman, Chu Mu's swordsmanship had become an instinct. He had a clear advantage in this aspect. Yang Xian quickly discovered that his counterattacks were becoming fewer and fewer. He was constantly dodging and blocking. His opponent's sword was like a torrential rain, attacking him from every angle without stopping. Furthermore, each sword contained a terrifying sharpness. There was also a shockwave that caused his sword-wielding hand to gradually turn numb. The 2 figures fought fiercely on the wooden bridge. Their swords collided, causing countless sparks to fly. The crisp sounds were ear-piercing. Yang Xian was constantly retreating, while Chu Mu was constantly attacking. Yang Xian's expression was unsightly. Chu Mu's strength had completely exceeded his expectations. He was at a disadvantage, and it was difficult for him to counterattack. Yang Xian wanted to retreat, but Chu Mu's attacks were too fast. He did not have the chance to escape. Chu Mu, let's forget about this today. In the future, we'll mind our own business, said Yang Xian. Otherwise, Night Underworld Hall won't rest until you're dead. If Yang Xian had only said the first part, Chu Mu might have considered letting Yang Xian go. After all, his goal wasn't to fight with Night Underworld Hall. However, Yang Xian's last words had infuriated Chu Mu. His sword slashed down, and with a twist of his wrist, the sword flipped over and knocked Yang Xian's sword aside. Then it coiled up, leaving Yang Xian's chest wide open. With a bang, accompanied by the sound of bone shattering, Yang Xian uncontrollably took a few steps back. What greeted him was a terrifying golden sword light that seemed capable of cleaving apart mountains. With a pucci, blood splattered. Half of Yang Xian's body had been cut in half. Yang Xian's eyes widened as he stared fixedly at Chu Mu. Then he fell backward, dead. On the other side, 3 of the 4 people fighting Lin Yi's group had also been killed. Only Chiu Minglei had managed to escape. Unfortunately, when he rushed in Chu Mu's direction, what greeted him was a sharp sword light. Behind the sword light was a pair of cold eyes. Chapter 12:18. In the depths of the wilderness, Qin Gang was slightly startled. He muttered to himself, "What happened to junior brother Yang? Why did he lose 1,000 genius points and drop his ranking?" Zhu Tiantong was also astonished. His face sank. Yang Xian's ranking might have dropped because someone else had comprehended something and obtained genius points, thus surpassing him. However, the fact that he had 1,000 points less could only mean one thing. Yang Xian had died once. Yang Xian was at the first heavenly layer. Every time he died, his qi cultivation or physique cultivation points would be randomly dropped. If he fell below the first heavenly layer, the 1,000 genius points he received would naturally be deducted. He would have to advance to the first heavenly layer to gain more. If Yang Xian had been killed by a void beast, there would be nothing to say. However, if Yang Xian had been killed by someone else, this grudge must be avenged. No matter who it was, anyone who dared to kill a member of the Dark Night Hall had to be prepared for the Dark Night Hall's revenge. Yang Xian and Chiu Minglei did not inform Qin Gang and Zhu Tiantong of their actions. Look, senior brother Chu's ranking has risen to 4th. Yang Xian's ranking dropped several places in an instant. Under the Dark Night Tribe's resurrection steel, Yang Xian, Chiu Minglei, and the others who had been resurrected all had gloomy expressions. Even their eyes were bloodshot. The hatred in their hearts could not be washed away by the torrential river. It was obvious that this matter would not be settled so easily. Chu Mu also knew that this matter would not be settled so easily. However, he was not afraid. Originally, he had thought that death would be the end of it. Only now did he know that one of the 2 celestial layers of qi and body tempering had dropped by 1 celestial layer. Thinking about it, if one's qi and body tempering had dropped by 1 celestial layer, the price would be too great. No matter which Yang Xian's qi and body tempering had dropped, it would take some time for him to recover. It would be very difficult for him to catch up. Junior brother Chu, let's hunt a void beast together? Lin Yi invited. The battle just now had made their eyes shine. Chu Mu was very strong. Thank you, senior brother Lin, junior brother Jiang. However, I still prefer to travel alone. Chu Mu said. All right then. I hope to see junior brother Chu return to the top. Lin Yi said with a smile. After crossing the wooden bridge and entering the wilderness, the group split up. Chu Mu ran at full speed, covering more than a meter with each step. His speed was extremely high, and his legs seemed to have turned into wheels. Like a wild horse, he ran deep into the wilderness and headed in the direction of the Wolf Valley. As soon as he entered the Wolf Valley, Chumu stopped and carefully looked around. He discovered that there were traces of other people. 7. Chumu muttered to himself as he headed in different directions. If he encountered others, there might be unnecessary conflicts. In the Wolf Valley, there were many red-eyed wolves. Not long after, Chumu killed 3 red-eyed wolves with his sword and obtained 3 strands of rank 1 ethereal chi. After absorbing the ethereal chi, he realized that the effects of the ethereal chi were greatly reduced. It was only 1/10 of what it was before. In other words, absorbing a strand of level 1 illusory chi could only increase one's strength by 50 kilograms. If one were to absorb level 1 illusory chi to cultivate, one would need at least 100 strands of level 1 illusory chi to advance from the first heaven to the second heaven. Cultivating both chi and level 1 illusory chi meant that one would need at least 200 strands of level 1 illusory chi. No wonder it was said that cultivating both chi and level 1 illusory chi would consume more resources. This was not a good news. The good news was that killing the red-eyed wolves this time was much easier. He could kill one with a casual swing of his sword. Even if he was surrounded by 10 red-eyed wolves, he could still kill them easily. It was completely different from yesterday. Chumu was not complacent. Instead, he worked even harder and tried his best to study how to kill the red-eyed wolves in a more direct, faster, and sharper manner. When he killed the 18th red-eyed wolf, he encountered another red-eyed battle wolf. The incomparably ferocious crimson-eyed battle wolves led a group of lackeys and attacked from different angles. Good timing, Chumu said excitedly. His right hand shook and the black iron sword vibrated. Golden light flowed as he stabbed out with his sword. The sharp sword exploded with power and pierced through the forehead of a red-eyed wolf, easily breaking its skull. It was as weak as tofu. A terrifying pale golden chi pierced through the red-eyed wolf's body and shot out from it, but this sword did not use the power of vibration. It was only supported by the sword intent and the power of gold. With this sword, Chumu vaguely caught onto something. His figure moved swiftly, avoiding the sharp claws of the red-eyed battle wolf. He waved his sword and killed one red-eyed wolf after another. Cultivating both chi and level 1 celestial layer allowed Chumu to face the red-eyed battle wolf with ease. Not long after, the red-eyed battle wolf's brothers were all dead, leaving it alone to face Chumu. Chumu was looking forward to it. Yesterday, he fought the red-eyed battle wolf with great difficulty. He wondered what would happen today. With a sudden leap, he pounced forward. His sharp wolf claws flickered with a cold glint, but his trajectory was clearly visible. Chumu didn't retreat, but instead advanced. He charged forward, and his black iron sword pierced forward like a meteor breaking through the moon. The golden light pierced through the air. The sword was like a flying immortal. The red-eyed battle wolf waved its claws. The claws broke through the air and grabbed at the golden sword light. An ear-piercing sound exploded and sparks flew. The red-eyed battle wolf's other claw grabbed from the side. It seemed to tear a few marks in the air, causing Chumu's face to hurt. Slashing with his sword, they collided again. Sparks flew as he used the force to spring up and thrust out his sword. The sword intent and the power of gold burst out in an instant. The sword's speed increased rapidly. The power condensed at the tip of the sword. It was incomparably sharp, as if it could pierce through the air. That sharp light caused the red-eyed battle wolf's scarlet eyes to reveal a trace of fear. This sword was too fast. There was no way to dodge. Chumu only felt that the sword in his hand had pierced something hard. With a little more force, the sharp light condensed at the tip of the sword broke through the hard object. The red-eyed battle wolf's body trembled, and it let out a wail. Its forehead was cut open by the sword. The sword went straight through its head. A terrifying power exploded in its body. shattering its internal organs. Pulling out the sword, the sound of the sword rubbing against the bones was obscure. Blood spurted out from the sword like a fountain. The scarlet eyes quickly dimmed. Its body fell to the ground, twitching a few times before it died. There's actually no notification. It seems that this sword is not considered sword art. Chu-Mu thought. After comprehending the sword intent and the power of gold, Chu-Mu came up with an idea. Could he also obtain talent points if he created his own sword art? Therefore, he integrated his own attainments in sword arts and integrated his own power. In battle, he consciously guided the power to explode out, causing greater destruction than usual. Of course, doing so would consume more power than usual. It would be at least several times more, maybe even more than 10 times more. It already had a shape. As long as he continued to work hard, Chu-Mu believed that he would be able to create a sword art to increase his strength. This red-eyed battle wolf gave Chu-Mu 6 strands of rank 1 illusory chi. However, there was nothing else. This time, Chu-Mu obtained a total of 12 strands of rank 1 illusory chi. It had only been 4 hours since he entered the Wolf Valley, but he had already obtained 30 strands of rank 1 illusory chi. Chu-Mu absorbed all 30 strands of rank 1 illusory chi. His physique strengthened once again. His strength reached 13,000 jin, even stronger, using battle to nurture battle. Now, even the red-eyed battle wolf could not withstand 3 strikes from me. I wonder how strong the red-eyed wolf king is? Chu-Mu thought to himself. His sharp gaze looked towards the depths of the Wolf Valley. There might be a red-eyed wolf king there. Striding forward, he quickly headed towards the depths of the Wolf Valley, leaving behind a ground full of wolf corpses. The deeper he went into the Wolf Valley, the more red-eyed wolves he encountered. They pounced on him without fear of death, but all of them died under Chu-Mu's sword. Chu-Mu obtained another 20 strands of rank 1 illusory chi. His physique strengthened once again, and his strength reached 15,000 jin. He planned to first reach the peak of the first celestial layer of body cultivation, then increase his chi cultivation, and then break through to the second celestial layer. The breakthrough to the second celestial layer would definitely be more difficult than the first celestial layer. He encountered the third red-eyed battle wolf. As soon as the red-eyed battle wolf appeared, Chu-Mu dashed towards it. His footsteps were fast, and his speed was swift. Like a gust of wind, he raised his black iron sword. The sword light was dazzling, and then it was restrained. Immediately after, the power passed through the tip of the sword, turning into a golden light, piercing through the void. Before the red-eyed battle wolf could even show its might, its forehead was pierced through. The hole went through its head, straight to its neck. The power exploded, exploding into its body, shattering its internal organs. The red-eyed battle wolf's body trembled violently and fell to the ground. It struggled and twitched a few times before dying. For strands of first-grade void, chi rose from the red-eyed battle wolf's corpse. Among the red-eyed battle wolves that Chu-Mu had killed, his harvest was the least. However, for strands of first-grade void chi were better than nothing. With a roll, he directly absorbed them and quickly digested them, increasing his strength by another 400 jin. Suddenly, a wolf howl sounded from the depths of the Wolf Valley. Like a storm, it rolled and spread, rushing in all directions. The momentum was astonishing, containing a terrifying power, as if it was a king above the common people. It made all the hair on Chu-Mu's body stand on end. It's the Wolf King. Chu-Mu raised his head, looking towards the direction of the sound. He was secretly excited. Is that the sound of a red-eyed wolf? It's definitely not an ordinary red-eyed wolf, nor is it an elite red-eyed wolf. It's very likely to be the king of the red-eyed wolves. The 7 people who had entered the Wolf Valley earlier than Chu-Mu trembled when they heard the sound. Their faces changed as they thought of something, and their faces were filled with excitement. Each of the 7 of them had a cultivation base of the first heavenly layer, and 2 of them had even reached the first heavenly layer. They had accidentally discovered the Wolf Valley and entered it. They had encountered many red-eyed wolves. The 7 of them had worked together to hunt them down, continuously obtaining void chi. Each of them had obtained great benefits, and their strength had increased. Not long ago, the 7 of them had worked together to kill a red-eyed battle wolf. Not only had they obtained 6 strands of first-grade void chi, but they had also obtained a basic movement technique. Now that they had heard the sound of the Wolf King, they were even more surprised. Killing the Wolf King would definitely bring them great rewards. The 7 of them immediately decided to enter the Wolf Valley to find the red-eyed Wolf King and kill it. At the same time, Chumu had also decided to enter the Wolf Valley to find the red-eyed Wolf King. He wanted to see how strong the red-eyed Wolf King was before deciding whether to hunt it down. Chapter 12:19. The wolf's shadow pounced, and a golden light flashed across the sky. The sword slashed the wolf in half. The golden sword light pierced through the air and pierced through the wolf's body. The wolf's body flipped in the air, and the sword slashed down again. Chu Mu obtained 3 strands of first-grade void chi. After absorbing and strengthening them, his strength increased to 15,700 pounds. Now, with Chu Mu's strength in the entire outer valley of the Wolf Valley, except for the crimson-eyed Wolf King, no other wolf could block Chu Mu's sword, not even the crimson-eyed battle wolf. When he finally reached the deepest part of the outer valley of the Wolf Valley, Chu Mu was surprised to see 7 figures. Not far from him, the 7 people also noticed Chu Mu. I can't believe he went into the Wolf Valley alone. The leader of the 7 was Yi Qian, a secret disciple of the Great Thousand Sword Sect, ranked 8th on the Galaxy Genius list. He was also the leader of the Great Thousand Sect in the Night Dark Tribe. Senior brother, should we warn him? Someone next to him asked. No, if he dares to go into the Wolf Valley alone. His strength must be extraordinary. Maybe he's one of the top 10. It's best if we don't offend him. Yi Qian said. But what if he causes trouble when we're dealing with the Wolf King? Then we'll kill him. Yi Qian said as if he was stating a fact. Not wanting to offend him didn't mean that they should retreat. Chu Mu's idea was to let the 7 people test the strength of the crimson-eyed Wolf King. In the deepest part of the outer valley of the Wolf Valley, on top of a huge grayish-brown rock, stood an awe-inspiring giant wolf. This wolf's body was bigger than the red-eyed battle wolf, but it didn't look bloated. Instead, it looked stronger and more agile, giving off a strong visual impact. The giant wolf's fur was darker than the crimson-eyed battle wolf's. It was almost black and looked like steel needles. The wolf's mouth was more protruding than the crimson-eyed battle wolf's, and its fangs were crisscrossed. It looked very ferocious. The claws were incomparably sharp as they clawed at the huge rock, leaving behind streaks of marks that flickered with cold light. A terrifying aura burst out from its body. Below the boulder, a pack of crimson-eyed wolves had gathered. 12 crimson-eyed battle wolves led the pack, and there were over 100 other crimson-eyed wolves. They were orderly, as if they were an army that was being inspected by the Wolf King. Chu Mu and Yi Qian's group of 7 slowly approached from 2 different directions. When they saw this scene, they were shocked and their scalps went numb. Not to mention the Wolf King. Just the 12 crimson-eyed battle wolves and over 100 strong crimson-eyed battle wolves were not something they could handle. Even Chu Mu himself, who could easily kill a crimson-eyed battle wolf, would be in danger if he was surrounded by several crimson-eyed battle wolves. 12 crimson-eyed battle wolves were enough to tear him to pieces, not to mention the 12 crimson-eyed battle wolves. Just the hundreds of stronger crimson-eyed battle wolves were enough to make him suffer. Senior brother Yi, what should we do? One of them asked. Yi Qian muttered to himself as his mind raced. Senior brother Yi, I have an idea. Why don't we directly provoke the Wolf King? Given the Wolf King's arrogance, he might directly fight with us. One of the disciples' eyes brightened as he spoke. We can give it a try. Yi Qian said, "Wolves were proud and aloof creatures, especially the Wolf King, which possessed a certain level of intelligence. Therefore, if they directly challenged the Wolf King, it might work. They wouldn't need to face the pack of crimson-eyed battle wolves and crimson-eyed battle wolves. I will directly challenge the Wolf King. If it works, we will fight. If it doesn't work, we can only temporarily retreat." Yi Qian said. As it stood up, the Wolf King's fiery eyes fell on Yi Qian. Even though they were a few thousand meters away, Yi Qian still felt a great pressure pressing down on him. Immediately after, the hundreds of crimson-eyed battle wolves below all locked their gazes on Yi Qian, causing his expression to change drastically. Cold sweat seeped out of his forehead and dripped down. Zhao Fu didn't say anything as he pointed his sword at the scarlet-eyed Wolf King. After all, the scarlet-eyed Wolf King couldn't understand human language, but it was clear that he was provoking the scarlet-eyed Wolf King. A hint of mockery flashed through its fiery red eyes. It let out a howl, as if it was giving an order. All the crimson-eyed battle wolves that were about to attack immediately quieted down. The Wolf King exerted force on its four limbs and leaped into the air. It landed a few dozen meters away. Then with a bang, it started to run wildly again. It was like a black lightning bolt, rapidly approaching Yi Qian. So fast! Chumu was shocked. Not long after, the crimson-eyed Wolf King leaped once again. Yi Qian only saw a black figure flash in front of him. Soon after, 3 cold rays of light tore through the sky, causing him to feel as if his body was being torn apart. Kill! With a loud shout to boost his courage, Yi Qian fiercely slashed out with his sword. A red light flashed. It was the power of fire. The other 6 people also slashed out with their swords, adding their sword intent and other powers. They exploded with all their strength and attacked. The Wolf King waved its claws, and a cold light flashed past. With an ear-piercing sound, it broke apart a few swords. Another claw reached out, and at the same time, it opened its protruding mouth and bit viciously. With one attack, the Wolf King broke through the encirclement of the 7 people. It landed on a huge rock. Its tall and strong body made people feel intimidated. It quickly counterattacked. Yi Qian and the other 6 people surrounded the Wolf King again and attacked from all angles. Sword after sword, they exploded with all their strength. After a few collisions, a black iron sword was broken by the Wolf King's sharp claws. Its head stretched forward and opened its mouth to bite the genius swordsman who had broken his sword. 2 swords took the opportunity to slash at the Wolf King's body. Unexpectedly, the sound of metal clashing could be heard. There were faint sparks flying. It was the friction between the swords and the needle-like black fur on the Wolf King's body. Only a few strands of black fur were cut off. They couldn't cause any real damage to the Wolf King. The Wolf King slashed down again. In the cold light, drops of blood rolled. Another person was killed. Yi Qian stabbed out with his sword. It was earth-shattering. Even if it was a piece of steel, it would have a hole in it. With a flash of cold light, the Wolf King's claws clashed with the tip of the sword. The huge force caused the black iron sword to bend and almost break. Exhaling, Zhang Xian unleashed his strength and straightened his swords. The scarlet-eyed Wolf King remained motionless while Yi Qian took a few steps back. The 4 swords charged forward from 4 different directions. Their auras surged, and the sword light flashed violently. The 4 sword lights slashed at the red-eyed Wolf King's sturdy body at the same time. The sound of metal clashing could be vaguely heard, but the red-eyed Wolf King only managed to cut off some of its fur. The red-eyed Wolf King actually stood up on its hind legs and spat out a mouthful of blood. The sharp and violent sound wave was like a gust of wind, causing everyone to feel dizzy. The Wolf King's sharp claws slashed out at high speed. The cold light flashed, and the sound of metal clashing filled the air. The 4 black iron swords were all broken. Yi Qian's face changed. He quickly yelled, "Run!" The Wolf King was too scary. There was no way to fight it. If they continued to fight, everyone would be killed. They would lose a layer of sky and suffer heavy losses. Yi Qian's sword exploded like a raging inferno. Borrowing the force of the collision, Yi Qian retreated. The other four also retreated. Using their broken swords as hidden weapons, they threw them at the red-eyed Wolf King. Then they turned around and ran away at full speed. The Wolf King roared. How could it let them escape? It jumped up as fast as the wind and pounced on them. It tore one of them apart from the back. Then it rushed to the other and bit down. No one could stop the terrifying Wolf King. They were killed one by one. In the end, even Yi Qian couldn't escape. After a slight struggle, his black iron sword was also broken by the Wolf King. Without his black iron sword, Yi Qian's strength decreased by at least half. His speed was not as fast as the Wolf King, so he was no match for it. At this point, the team of 7 led by Yi Qian had all been killed by the Wolf King's sharp claws. After winning the battle, the Wolf King howled at the sky. Its howl was shocking. A powerful aura surged out from its strong body. As if responding to the scarlet-eyed Wolf King, the other scarlet-eyed wolves all raised their heads towards the sky and let out howls. Their howls rose and fell, causing Chu Mu, who was hiding behind a huge rock, to feel a chill run down his spine. The Wolf King's fiery eyes swept across the area. Its gaze was extremely sharp, as if it was looking for other strange creatures that could walk upright. It didn't find anything. It jumped back into the pack of wolves. With another jump, it returned to its original spot on the huge rock. Chu Mu let out a sigh of relief. He was still surprised by the Wolf King's strength. The Wolf King's strength hasn't been fully displayed yet. Carefully thinking back to the fight between the red-eyed Wolf King and the 7 swordsmen, the 7 swordsmen weren't weak, especially the leader, who was rather powerful. However, under their combined efforts, they were still killed by the red-eyed Wolf King. Chu Mu felt that the red-eyed Wolf King hadn't displayed its full strength. If he were to fight the Wolf King with all his strength, what would happen? The result would be that he would be killed and torn to pieces by the Wolf King. With my qi and qi cultivation, my ability to use my strength, my explosive speed, and my reflexes, I should be able to contend with the Wolf King for a while. Chu Mu thought to himself. However, he frowned slightly. But the Wolf King's stamina and endurance far surpass mine. Even if I can contend with it, it won't be of any use. The most important thing is how to kill it. Under normal circumstances, only those who have reached the 2nd heavenly layer and wielded a tungsten steel sword can fight the red-eyed Wolf King at full strength. But for me, I only need to break through the red-eyed Wolf King's defense. Not only was the red-eyed Wolf King powerful, it was also fast and had a shocking reaction speed. Its claws and fangs were also incomparably sharp. Moreover, the defense of its fur was extremely shocking. However, Chu Mu knew that if he could break through the red-eyed Wolf King's defense, he would be able to fight it. If he wanted to break through the scarlet-eyed Wolf King's defense, he would have to use the tungsten steel sword and the metal sword will. Otherwise, he would have to create the sword technique that he was currently creating, which would have a chance of breaking through the scarlet-eyed Wolf King's defense. I wonder what the Wolf King's beast technique is. Chu Mu asked curiously. Chapter 1220. Why did senior brother Ye's ranking drop? Not only did senior brother Ye's ranking drop, but so did the other senior brothers and junior brothers. The Night Nether tribes ranking on the Galaxy Genius list changed again. Senior brother Yi, what should we do now? Let's hunt down the Void Beast and recover our strength first. The red-eyed Wolf King is very powerful. I think only a level 2 genius can fight against it. Yi Qian said with a gloomy face. He had no choice. His cultivation had dropped by 1 level 2, and his genius points had dropped by 1,000. His ranking had dropped out of the top 10. Do you think that person is also going to attack the Red-Eyed Wolf King? Well, that's impossible. The Red-Eyed Wolf King is so powerful. He can't defeat the Red-Eyed Wolf King alone. They didn't know Chu-Mu. Chu-Mu didn't attack the Red-Eyed Wolf King immediately because he wasn't sure. He wanted to improve his strength. He had to be stronger and break the Red-Eyed Wolf King's defense. Now, Chu-Mu put his hope on the sword technique that was taking shape. Using this sword technique's method of exerting force, he killed a few more red-eyed wolves. After absorbing them, his physical strength reached 16,000 kilograms. Since he couldn't find any more red-eyed wolves, Chu-Mu could only use the boulder to practice his sword. There was a huge rock in front of him. It was very hard. The black iron sword didn't inject any energy into it. When he stabbed it with all his strength, he could only leave a white mark on it and break some stone chips. Holding his breath and concentrating, Chu-Mu kept staring at the huge rock in front of him. On the huge rock, there were hundreds of sword holes. They were made when Chu-Mu was practicing his sword. The depth of the holes were different, and the size of the cuts were also different. Now he felt that after hundreds of practice adjustments, this sword technique was about to take shape. Staring at the small white that was cut open by his normal sword, Chu-Mu's eyes didn't blink and his pupils didn't move. The hand that was holding the sword naturally hung down. His entire body didn't move at all, as if he had become a statue. Gradually, even his breathing became very weak. The world before Chu-Mu's eyes seemed to be swallowed up by darkness. It gradually disappeared, shrinking from all directions behind him into nothingness. In the end, all that was left was the small white dot on the huge rock. Little White had become the only world in existence, which gradually expanded in front of Chu-Mu's eyes. It was as if a heaven and earth were crushing toward him with unparalleled might, as if it were trying to crush everything into nothingness. It was incomparably tough. It was as if all sharpness and sharpness could not be destroyed. Everything would be turned into powder under that toughness. Suddenly, Chu-Mu's right hand, which was holding the sword, trembled. The sword that was hanging down was instantly raised. He paused for a moment, accumulated power, and then suddenly burst out. The sword pierced out, as if it was piercing through the 9 heavens, shattering the vault of heaven and turning it into nothingness. This sword was extremely fast, like a falling meteorite. It was earth-shattering and earth-shattering, as if it could pierce through everything. It was extremely fierce. Because it was too fast, the friction between the sword and the air caused the blade to turn slightly red. The air also seemed to be on the verge of being ignited, and a burnt smell filled the air. With the support of the sword intent and the power of metal, the muscles in his body vibrated, transmitting to his arm and then to his wrist. Like a violent tide, all the power rushed to the tip of the sword, causing the speed of the sword to increase rapidly. The tip of the sword seemed to have been burned red by the high temperature, and it vibrated at a high frequency with an extremely small amplitude. It was impossible to see with the naked eye. In an instant, the golden light condensed into the tip of the sword, which seemed to have been burned red, and collided with the toughness that was crushing toward him. There was no pause at all. The hardness that came crushing down was as fragile as a piece of tofu. That hardness was instantly torn apart by the tip of the sword that was imperceptible to the naked eye. It was also imbued with sword will and the power of metal. It was unstoppable as it pressed forward with an irresistible force. The sword, like a flash of golden light, pierced through. A pungent, burnt smell filled the air, and everything in front of him disappeared. Chu-Mu's black iron sword, from the small, white, deeply penetrated into the giant rock in front of him, all the way to the sword hilt. With a little force, he pulled the sword out of the giant rock. The sword hole on the giant rock was like a small mouth that was slightly opened. The edge of the hole was smooth and flat, and it was scorched black from the high temperature. You have comprehended a 2nd grade sword art. You have received 2,000 genius points. The fleeting voice once again sounded in Chu-Mu's mind, and only he could hear it. Chu Mu let out a smile. He had finally created this sword art. It was not a waste of his time and effort. Moreover, it was a second-grade sword art, and he received 2,000 genius points directly. The grade of a sword art should be calculated according to the power of the sword art. Chu Mu pondered for a moment. A sword art, the sword intent, is the foundation, and it is integrated with the power of heaven and earth. It is considered a first-grade sword art. My sword art has integrated the power of gold, but also the power of vibration. The power of vibration is not inferior to the power of gold. Therefore, it is evaluated as a second-grade sword art. In normal battles, although the sword intent, the power of heaven and earth, and even the power of vibration would be added to the sword, it was only a slight addition, and the consumption was very low. However, the sword art injected the power in an explosive way, so that the power would be released to the maximum in an instant, and the consumption of power would be more. After performing this sword art, Chu Mu felt that a lot of power had been consumed. With his current physical strength of 16,000 pounds and the strength of 10,000 pounds of internal qi, he could only perform it 3 times. After 3 times, there would not be much left. This sword art is very powerful, and it is mainly reflected in breaking and tearing everything. It is most suitable to deal with a target with strong defense. Let's call it armor breaking. Chu Mu muttered to himself. He wasn't interested in naming it. He didn't care if it could be passed down through the ages, as long as it was suitable. Just as Chu Mu was happy that he had created a sword art, the people who noticed the Galaxy Genius list were dumbfounded. What happened? Why did Chu Mu's name suddenly jump to first place? Moreover, his genius points increased by 2,000 points, reaching 6,000 points. Is it an illusion? Senior Brother Chu is really amazing. Deputy Sect Leader Xiang, this disciple of our 5-element sword sect is not bad, right? White Sky said faintly, and his tone contained a trace of happiness. He is indeed not bad. However, don't fall from first place all the way to the top 50 like before, Xiang retorted, but he was actually very shocked in his heart. Zhu Tiantong, Qin Gang, and the others who were hunting void beasts were all stunned as they felt the change in the Galaxy Genius list. Chu Mu actually increased his genius points by 2,000 points all of a sudden. What happened? Qin Gang was puzzled. Could it be that he comprehended 2 types of the power of the heavens and earth at once? No, that's impossible. Or did he advance to the second sky? Zhu Tiantong made all kinds of guesses. Lin Yi and the others were stunned at first, but then they all laughed. Chu Mu had returned to first place and was leading by 2,000 points, trampling Zhu Tiantong down. This was very satisfying. Comprehending the power of the heavens and earth was the easiest the first time, but the difficulty would increase several times over. It was impossible to comprehend 2 types of the power of the heavens and earth at once. Chu Mu must have gained something else. Chu Mu was a disciple of the 5-element sword sect, and in name he was also a member of the 5-element sect. Most of the members of the 5-element sword sect were very happy that he was at the top of the list. Only a few people were unhappy. This change made many people even more motivated and put in more effort to hunt void beasts. After creating a sword technique to break armor, Chu Mu's attack power had been greatly enhanced. He felt that this sword technique was enough to break the tough fur of the crimson-eyed Wolf King and cause serious injury to it. Therefore, he decided to challenge the crimson-eyed Wolf King. With his strength, even if he could not kill the crimson-eyed Wolf King, the wolf might not be able to kill him. But before that, there was one thing he had to do first, which was to recover his strength. He sat down by the giant rock and ran the primary qi training formula to recover his almost exhausted internal qi. While his internal qi was recovering, his physical strength was also recovering. After his internal qi was fully recovered, Chu Mu picked up the dry food and water and ate to his heart's content. The whole process took about 4 hours, and his physical strength was fully recovered. Looking at the sky, he found that the sun's rays were not so fierce. Gradually, it sank into the west, and there was a faint red glow on the sky. It was almost sunset. It seemed that in about 2 hours the scorching sun would set in the west, and the sky would be dark and night would fall. But this time, Chu-Mu decided not to return to the Dark Night tribe, but to stay in the Wolf Valley. With his current strength, as long as he was not surrounded by a large number of crimson-eyed wolves, even if they went berserk, they could not do anything to him. Instead, they would be killed by him. As for the consumption of physical strength, as long as he absorbed the void chi from the wolves, he could quickly recover. The problem of food and water was also solved. The 7 men killed by the crimson-eyed Wolf King had some dry food with them. After their deaths, their bodies disappeared, but their dry food and water bottles did not disappear. They only needed 1 water bottle because there was a stream in the Wolf Valley. Chu-Mu collected all the dry food, which could last them for 2 days. In fact, Chu-Mu was not the only one who had this idea. Some people, such as Zhu Tiantong and Qin Gang, had the same idea. They were strong enough, and they had the cooperation of others. In this case, let's go challenge the crimson-eyed Wolf King now, Chu-Mu said to himself. After packing up, Lin Yun moved and quickly went to the depths of the valley where the crimson-eyed Wolf King was. 15 minutes later, Chu-Mu stopped and looked ahead. 12 crimson-eyed battle wolves and hundreds of strong crimson-eyed wolves were scattered in all directions, while the crimson-eyed Wolf King was lying on top of a huge rock with its eyes closed, as if it was resting. The wind blew, but the needle-like black fur did not move at all. Even though the crimson-eyed Wolf King was lying on the rock, it still emitted a powerful aura. Taking a deep breath, Chu-Mu jumped lightly, but landed heavily on the ground. The movement caused the crimson-eyed Wolf King's ears to stand up, and its drooping eyes opened. Its burning eyes stared at Lin Yun. Without saying a word, Chu-Mu raised his sword and pointed it at the crimson-eyed Wolf King. His eyes were sharp, and his left hand stretched out a finger, provoking the wolf. The crimson-eyed Wolf King's burning eyes flashed with a hint of mockery. It slowly got up and stretched. Chapter 1221. The black figure flashed through the air like a bolt of lightning. The moment it leapt up, its sharp claws tore through the air. A cold glint flashed, causing chills to run down Chu Li's spine. Chu-Mu's eyes shone brightly. He quickly retreated and brandished his sword. Like quicksilver flowing down the ground, it was impenetrable, blocking all of the scarlet-eyed Wolf King's claws. The sword was infused with sword intent and the power of metal, as well as a slight vibration force, preventing the black iron sword from being broken by the Wolf King's claws. Every time the sword collided, Chu-Mu could feel a huge force rushing towards him. It was much stronger than the scarlet-eyed battle wolf, reaching at least 20,000 jin. That was the level of the second celestial layer. Not only was it strong, but it was also extremely fast. It was several times stronger than the scarlet-eyed battle wolf. Moreover, the scarlet-eyed Wolf King was even more outstanding than the scarlet-eyed battle wolf in terms of the use of power. It brought great pressure to Chu-Mu. Chu-Mu had to concentrate fully to block the scarlet-eyed Wolf King's claws one by one. He then turned his sword and slashed out again, counterattacking. This was Chu-Mu's probing attack. He did not expect it to cause any damage to the scarlet-eyed Wolf King. His sword was fast, direct, and unpredictable. Even with the scarlet-eyed Wolf King's abilities, it was unable to block it. In an instant, its chest was sliced open. An obscure sound rang out. The needle-like black fur was cut off. Sparks flew everywhere. The sword, which contained all kinds of power, only left a faint white mark on the scarlet-eyed Wolf King's chest. Chu-Mu personally experienced how tough the scarlet-eyed Wolf King's fur was and how strong its defense was. However, if he used armor-piercing, he was confident that he could break through it. However, armor-piercing needed time to accumulate power. Although it was very short, it was not easy to grasp. If he was not careful, the scarlet-eyed Wolf King could dodge or counterattack. As he fought, Chu-Mu kept retreating. Although the Scarlet-Eyed Wolf King had some intelligence, it was not as complicated as humans. It only wanted to kill Chu-Mu. Therefore, as Chu-Mu kept retreating, it kept approaching and attacking. It was extremely crazy. The terrifying claw shadows filled the air, and the boulders that they cut were as fragile as tofu, shattering one after another. Chu-Mu's coarse linen clothes were torn in many places by the force, making him look like a beggar. The terrifying force even made him feel a piercing pain on his skin. The Scarlet-Eyed Wolf King's claws, head, and mouth could be used for attacking. The claws were extremely sharp, and the fangs in its mouth were not only sharp, but also had an amazing biting power. Its head was incomparably hard, and if one was hit by it, one's body would probably be fractured. The Scarlet-Eyed Wolf King was able to fully utilize its advantages. The Scarlet-Eyed Wolf King discovered that this creature that was walking upright was much more powerful than the 7 it had killed not long ago. It was actually able to withstand its attacks for so long. In truth, Chu-Mu was also under a great deal of pressure. Although he did his best to dissipate the power of each collision, there was still a portion of the impact that made his arms and palms numb, and the web between his thumb and forefinger hurt. Fortunately, he was proficient in all kinds of ways to dissipate and borrow power. Furthermore, he was able to alternately use the black iron sword in his left and right hands to withstand the attack. In a flash, a cold light flashed in front of his eyes. Chu-Mu could feel the bone-piercing cold. Just a few millimeters more, and his face would have been torn apart. After a long battle, the Scarlet-Eyed Wolf King was enraged. Its scarlet-red eyes suddenly emitted a shocking light. Immediately after, Chu-Mu felt a terrifying wave of energy coming from the Scarlet-Eyed Wolf King's body. It was extremely violent, as if there was a ferocious beast hidden within the Scarlet-Eyed Wolf King's body that was about to break out. Beast power. A thought flashed through his mind, and a word came out. When the Scarlet-Eyed Wolf King was fighting with Yi Qian and the others, it did not use its beast power, but now it was using it. A strong sense of danger swept through Chu-Mu's body, causing him to be greatly alarmed. Soon after, a red light gathered on the Scarlet-Eyed Wolf King's raised claws. With a swoosh, it burned like a flame, turning into a giant flaming claw. A terrifying heat rippled out, spreading out like a raging inferno, incinerating everything. Chu-Mu only felt his mouth and tongue dry. It was as if he had walked in the desert for an entire day without drinking a mouthful of water. The giant flaming claw ruthlessly fell like a meteor, locking onto Chu-Mu. The terrifying heat caused Chu-Mu to be terrified. The Scarlet-Eyed Wolf King's beast skill, Flaming Claw. When the flaming claw came out, raging flames burned the sky, intending to turn Chu-Mu into ashes. Chu-Mu hurriedly retreated. His footsteps were quick, and the vibration force exploded. He did not dare to take it head-on, nor did he dare to use his sword to block it. He felt that the black iron sword would definitely not be able to withstand this claw, and would shatter in an instant. If he lost the black iron sword, he would not be able to use his armor-piercing swordsmanship. His strength would also be reduced by half, and he could only escape. But now, the sun was gradually setting. If he lost his sword, it would be difficult for him to survive in the Wolf Valley at night. Chu-Mu retreated quickly, but the Scarlet-Eyed Wolf King's flaming claw was not slow either. As soon as it fell, the ground was immediately charred black, and the sand and stones on the ground began to soften. Chu-Mu only felt that his entire body was burning. His lips were so dry that they were about to split open. His throat felt like it was stuffed with charcoal, and his skin also became dry. Because of the high temperature, even his consciousness was affected. He was inexplicably in a trance. The sword intent exploded, cutting off the trance in his consciousness. He instantly regained consciousness. Ignoring the injuries on his body, he explosively used the vibration force to support his legs. He fiercely stomped on the ground and retreated in an instant. He narrowly avoided the attack. The flaming claw fell with a loud boom, and charred dust flew everywhere. Every drop of the flaming claw was terrifyingly hot and could easily burn an ordinary person to death. A 3-inch deep, charred claw mark appeared on the ground. For streaks of fire, with the claw mark as the starting point, shot out from the ground like knives. They shot out for more than 5 meters, creating 4 charred trenches. The sand and stones in the trenches had all melted into liquid. The terrifying attack shocked Chumu, but it also excited him. Killing such a powerful scarlet-eyed wolf king would give him a greater sense of accomplishment. The scarlet-eyed wolf king was enraged that it could not kill the creature in front of it after activating the beast skill, Flaming Claw. It suddenly charged forward, and with its incomparably hard head, it charged forward at high speed. Chumu hurriedly dodged, but the boulder behind him was directly smashed into pieces. A few pieces exploded towards Chumu, but he quickly waved his sword and used his dexterity to throw those pieces of rock at the scarlet-eyed wolf king. The pieces of rock bombarded the scarlet-eyed wolf king's body, but the scarlet-eyed wolf king was not affected at all. Instead, it was the shattered pieces of rock that angered the scarlet-eyed wolf king even more. Chumu's goal was to enrage the scarlet-eyed wolf king and make it use the beast skill, Flaming Claw again. Only then would he have the opportunity to use the armor-piercing technique. Beast skills were like swordsmanship, they needed some time to be used. Just now, because the power of the beast skill was too strong and Chumu was continuously pushed back by the scarlet-eyed wolf king's attacks, he could not seize the opportunity to use it again. After a fierce battle, Chumu gradually got used to the scarlet-eyed wolf king's attack rhythm and intensity. His potential was further developed, and it became easier for him to deal with the scarlet-eyed wolf king's frenzied attacks. Chumu also tried his best to avoid using his sword to clash with the scarlet-eyed wolf king's claws. Although he could deflect the force every time, if this happened too many times, the black iron sword would not be able to withstand it. One strike, he only needed one chance to strike. After many attacks, Chumu dodged them one by one, causing destruction to the surroundings. It also allowed Chumu to repeatedly throw rocks at his body. Although he was unharmed, it did not feel good. As the king of a tribe, his dignity was greatly challenged. Angry, the scarlet-eyed wolf king was even angrier. Its body once again exploded with a terrifying aura, as if a peerless beast had awoken. Chumu's eyes lit up. The scarlet-eyed wolf king raised its claws, and the flames once again grew bigger. With an even more ferocious stance, the claws fell, as if they could shatter everything. This time, Chumu would not let go of this opportunity. He hurriedly dodged to the side. His footsteps were quick, and he was extremely focused, as if he was dancing on the tip of a sword. With a boom, the ground shook and exploded. The claw print was more than 3 inches deep. For terrifying flames once again rushed out like blades. Now was the time. The step that he took forward suddenly stopped. He raised the black iron sword, and with a slight pause, his body's powerful inner chi instantly exploded. The sword pierced forward in a straight line. Then, with the support of the sword will and the power of gold, all the muscles in his body vibrated and flowed into the black iron sword like waves. It produced a powerful driving force, causing the speed of the sword to more than double. The smell of burning filled the air again. The air seemed to have been ignited. A red light appeared on the body of the sword, and the power rushed to the tip of the sword. The tip of the sword, which seemed to have been burned red, was covered with a layer of gold. The sword vibrated at an extremely high frequency that the naked eye could not see. One sword to break the armor, the unstoppable sword, which could even pierce the sky, pierced towards the right eye of the scarlet-eyed wolf king. Sensing the great danger, the scarlet-eyed wolf king hurriedly moved its head to dodge the sword. In an instant, the tip of the sword came into contact with the scarlet-eyed wolf king's forehead. A strong resistance caused the sword to bend slightly. Chu Mu's wrist shook, and the power exploded once again, causing the sword to straighten. With a piercing, shattering sound, the scarlet-eyed Wolf King's incomparably hard skull was torn apart and pierced. The sword pierced through the skull, and the intense friction between the sword and the skull caused a scorching heat to spread. A terrifying power exploded within the scarlet-eyed Wolf King's head, and in an instant the scarlet-eyed Wolf King's brain was ground to mush. The scarlet-eyed Wolf King's eyes widened. Its gaze was like a burning flame, but it slowly extinguished and dimmed. With great difficulty, it swiped out a claw, still wanting to kill Chu Mu. However, it fell powerlessly an inch away from Chu Mu. With a bang, the tall and strong scarlet-eyed Wolf King fell to the ground, causing a cloud of dust to fly. Seeing that the scarlet-eyed Wolf King was killed, Chu Mu heaved a sigh of relief. Suddenly, he felt pain all over his body, especially the muscles in his calves. It felt as if they had been torn apart. His entire body was exhausted, and he sat down on the ground. Although the scarlet-eyed Wolf King was dead, Chu Mu had almost exhausted all of his energy and was even injured. Fortunately, there were no other scarlet-eyed wolves nearby, or else he would have been in danger. Chapter 12:22. The setting sun was like blood, dyeing half of the sky red. The clouds seemed to have been ignited, and the sky was dyed red. A cool breeze blew, ruffling his hair. Unknowingly, a feeling of dusk filled the air. After resting for a while, Chu Mu felt that he had recovered a little. Not far from the corpse of the scarlet-eyed Wolf King, there are some things floating up. There was void chi, and there were also balls of light. 20 strands of rank 1 void chi. 1 strand of rank 2 void chi. This harvest is not bad. Chu Mu looked and smiled. The scarlet-eyed Wolf King had at most 6 strands of rank 1 void chi. The scarlet-eyed Wolf King had 20 strands of rank 1 void chi and 1 strand of rank 2 void chi, which was equal to 30 strands of rank 1 void chi. Just the void chi harvest was not bad. However, if it was just in terms of void chi, it was actually not worth it, because when he fought fiercely with the Wolf King, he was surrounded by danger and was almost killed. Even if he killed the Wolf King, he was exhausted and suffered light injuries. He only obtained 30 strands of level 1 void chi. It was easier to kill 30 crimson-eyed wolves. What really made Chu Mu happy were the 2 balls of light. One of them was bright yellow and emitted a halo of light. It looked very attractive. The other was transparent and seemed to contain something inside. The bright yellow ball of light was closest to Chu Mu. Taking a deep breath, he picked up the water bottle and drank a few mouthfuls of water to relieve the burning feeling in his body. Chu Mu stood up. His calf muscles still felt a trace of pain. Taking 2 steps forward, he approached the corpse of the scarlet-eyed Wolf King. He reached out and grabbed the closest bright yellow ball of light, absorbing it in an instant. Intermediate body transformation technique. As soon as the bright yellow ball of light entered his body, it turned into a stream of information that entered his mind. Another figure appeared and began to practice, making Chu Mu very happy. Intermediate body transformation technique in the bookstore was worth 1,000 strands of rank 2 void chi. Compared to the intermediate body transformation technique, 20 strands of rank 1 void chi and 1 strand of rank 2 void chi were nothing. Immediately, Chu Mu's gaze fell on the other ball of light. Based on his 2 experiences, any clump of light was definitely something good. Its value was not something that a few strands of faux chi could compare to. When Chu Mu reached out to grab the transparent ball of light, he felt a sense of danger. The sound of wind breaking instantly rang out. Out of the corner of his eye, he caught a glimpse of cold light shooting through the air at an extremely fast speed. 1 shot towards Chu Mu's hand, while 3 shot towards Chu Mu's body. It was extremely ruthless. After the cold light, there were even more figures rapidly approaching. Chu Mu's extended left hand swayed. dodging the cold light and grabbing the transparent ball of light. Immediately after, his body spun in the air, causing the 3 cold light beams to shoot past him. His right hand gripped the black iron sword that was stuck in between the Wolf King's eyebrows. With a sudden burst of strength, he pulled out the sword and slashed out. The golden red sword light pierced through the air. With a poochy sound, the blade pierced through the body, and a blood-curdling scream was heard. At the same time, 3 sharp sword light slashed towards Chu Mu from different angles. Between the gaps of the sword light, there were several cold lights that were extremely sharp and came from tricky angles. This caused Chu Mu's expression to change. With a swing of his sword, the golden red sword light exploded, shattering the several cold lights and breaking apart 3 more sword light. Although Chu Mu had absorbed most of the force, his own strength had only recovered slightly. Unable to resist, he could not help but take 2 steps back. The sword light came for him again. Immediately after, there were 2 more sword light behind him that were extremely violent. With irresistible force, Chu Mu felt a great sense of danger. Attacking from the front and the back, a figure appeared in the sky. Several cold lights shot down first. Then, a shrill sword light fell from the sky like a meteor, causing Chu Mu's head to feel cold. Under such a siege, if he was in his peak condition, he might be able to dodge or even counterattack. However, at this moment, Chu Mu's calf muscles were still in pain. There was only a strand of inner qi left in his body, and his physical strength had only recovered a little. His strength was only 10% of his peak condition. Chu Mu was very calm. Being besieged was unexpected, and it could only mean that he was not vigilant enough. After exhausting his strength, all his aspects were affected, and his perception was greatly weakened. That was why he was attacked. The purpose of attacking him was either because of his wealth, or because the people of Night Nether Hall wanted to take revenge. But no matter which reason it was, Chu Mu knew that this time he was probably going to die. Even if I die, I will take a few with me. Hardening his resolve, Chu Mu did not dodge. He abruptly took a step forward and a resolute aura spread out. The sword in his hand poured the last bit of strength he had left into his sword, intent and metal power, exploding out with vibrating power. In the hands of an excellent swordsman, even a strand of power could be used to great effect. The golden red sword light was like a meteor that streaked across the sky. Because of the determination, it looked tragic. It was a desperate attack, and it was like a powerful army. It was so overbearing that it could even cut a part of the mountain. With a clang, the sword broke and blood filled the air. Then, Chu Mu felt intense pain all over his body. A few swords had pierced through his back and head. He was not dead yet. Chu Mu looked up with difficulty. He saw a mocking face, and his vision quickly turned dark. Holding the sword, his body fell backward on the ground. Then it quickly faded and disappeared. The transparent ball of light that Chu Mu was holding in his left hand also fell to the ground. Senior Zhou, junior brother Li, and junior brother Wang were killed. Someone said, "If they are dead, then they are dead. Later, I will give them some inner qi to recover their strength." Zhou Xinglong put away the mocking smile on his face and said indifferently. He quickly grabbed the transparent ball of light on the ground and absorbed it. Suddenly, the light on his body flickered. After 3 breaths, the coarse linen clothes on his body were gone, replaced by a full set of grayish-black leather armor and pants. The leather armor was very close to his body, as if it was tailor-made. It made Zhou Xinglong, who originally had an extraordinary appearance, look even more vigorous, as if he was a swordsman. On the leather armor, there was a tattoo of a red-eyed wolf. It was majestic. Senior brother Zhou, this is... The sudden change shocked everyone. Wolf shadow armor, 2nd grade inner spirit armor. It can block the attack of the tungsten steel sword without any damage. It can also activate the power of the wolf and become more agile for a certain period of time. Zhou Xinglong's tone could not hide his excitement. This harvest was completely out of his expectations. Other than the wolf shadow armor, there are 21st grade inner chi and 1 second grade inner chi. However, the person we killed must be very strong. We have to be careful of his revenge. No worries. With the wolf shadow armor, my strength has become stronger. If he dares to come for revenge, I will let him know my strength. Zhou Xinglong said. A few figures appeared in front of the resurrection monument in the Night Dark tribe. On the Galaxy Genius list, Chu Mu's talent points decreased by 1,000 to 5,000. This caused many people to be confused and discuss. After being resurrected, Chu Mu's face was gloomy. This time he had failed miserably. He did not expect that someone would enter the Wolf Valley at dusk and attack him when he was at his weakest state. Burning with anger, Chu Mu could not wait to rush out of the Night Dark tribe and enter the Wolf Valley again to kill all of them to vent his anger. It's you. If you kill us, you will die as well. You want to live under Senior Zhou's sword. The two people who were killed by Chu Mu stared at Chu Mu with hatred on their faces, as if they were the victims. This made Chu Mu's suppressed anger rise instantly. He stared at the two people with murderous eyes, causing them to tremble in fear. Who is Senior Zhou? Chu Mu asked coldly with a strong murderous aura. You want to know Senior Zhou's name and take revenge? I won't tell you. Although they were scared by Chu Mu's murderous aura, the two were still stubborn. Zhou Xinglong. Chu Mu suddenly said a name. It was the 7th on the Galaxy Genius list, the esoteric disciple of the Mo Shan sword sect. The two people's faces changed immediately, which let Chu Mu know that he had guessed correctly. Although Chu Mu was furious, he knew that he could not do anything in the Night Dark tribe. His sharp eyes made the two people tremble in fear. Tell Zhou Xinglong that my name is Chu Mu. I will take revenge. Tell him to wash his neck and wait. After saying that, Chu Mu turned around and went back to his wooden house. Although he wanted to rush out of the Night Dark tribe and kill his way into the Wolf Valley, it was already late. When he arrived at the Wolf Valley, it was already nighttime. The outer valley of the Wolf Valley was not small. It would not be easy to find a few people. Moreover, he had died once, either in chi refining or body tempering. His cultivation level had dropped by 1 sky. If he entered the Wolf Valley in the dark and encountered a large group of red-eyed wolves, it would be very dangerous. Thinking of this, Chu Mu quickly checked his body. Then he heaved a sigh of relief. What dropped his cultivation was chi refinement. His meridians were completely empty, without a single drop remaining. Although it was unpleasant, it was fortunate that it wasn't body transformation that dropped. Otherwise, his 16,000 gene of strength would drop to 10,000 gene, and the loss would be even greater. In addition, the coarse linen clothes on his body were brand new. After returning to the wooden house and closing the door, Chu Mu saw a sword hanging on the wall. It looked brand new, but it gave him a strange yet familiar feeling. He reached out and took the sword. There was a scabbard, but this scabbard was different from the black iron sword scabbard. It was dark red, and the pattern on the scabbard was like a wolf baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. The weight of the sword was also different from the black iron sword. It was heavier. When he pulled out the sword, a melodious, clanging sound was heard. The threatening red light was like blood. It shone on Chu Mu's eyes, which made his pupils shrink slightly. The head of the sword was like a wolf's head. The hilt was dark red. It was a little rough, but it was not prickly. Instead, it felt good and comfortable. The sword guard was more like fangs protruding out. The body of the sword was light red, and the spine was blood red. The tip of the sword was slimmer than the black iron sword. It was more suitable for stabbing. The edge of the sword was slimmer, but it also seemed to be wider. It was sharper when cutting and cutting. The more Chu Mu looked at it, the more surprised he was. The more he looked, the more delighted he was. A lethal weapon, an absolute lethal weapon. This was a terrifying sword that was full of sharpness. It was a sword that was born for killing. It was a terrifying killing sword. The weight was about a dozen kilograms, making Chumu feel that it was even more convenient because his current strength was even greater. Looking at it, Chumu suddenly used the tip of his sword to cut his finger and dripped a drop of blood. Chapter 1223. Scarlet Blood Sword, Second Grade Void Spirit Sword. It was created by absorbing the scarlet-eyed Wolf King's blood essence under high temperature. There was a 1 in 1,000 chance that it would transform. It was incredibly sharp and had the ability to absorb blood. It could absorb blood to accumulate energy, recover energy, and upgrade its grade. After dripping his blood on the sword, Chumu knew everything about the sword. He could not help but be stunned and then pleasantly surprised. The scarlet-eyed Wolf King had released the Flame Claw beast skill, causing the temperature of the air to rise rapidly. Naturally, the black iron sword was also affected. Then, Chumu used the armor-breaking sword art. The sword's speed was astonishing, and after the friction with the scorching air, it produced even more heat. The heat made the black iron sword look like a piece of burning iron. After breaking through the scarlet-eyed Wolf King's forehead and penetrating into its brain, the black iron sword seemed to have been reforged under the high temperature. The scarlet-eyed Wolf King's blood was also scorching hot. It was equivalent to pouring on the sword and being absorbed by the sword, causing the black iron sword to transform. The probability was 1 in 1,000. It had to be said that Chumu's luck was extremely good. The black iron sword was first grade, but it did not have any special effects. Therefore, it could not be considered a void spirit sword. The tungsten steel sword was second grade, but it was also not a void spirit sword. The scarlet blood sword was a second grade void spirit sword. Its sharpness was not inferior to the tungsten steel sword, and it even had the ability to absorb blood to recover energy and upgrade its grade. This sword is enough to cut through the scarlet-eyed Wolf King's skin. Waving the scarlet blood sword, Chumu's eyes shone brightly. The harvest from killing the scarlet-eyed Wolf King was really huge. An intermediate body transformation skill worth 1,000 strands of second-grade void chi. Even the black iron sword had mutated into a second-grade void spirit sword, and it also had the ability to absorb blood to upgrade its grade. In addition, there were 20 strands of first-grade void chi and 1 strand of second-grade void chi. There was also that transparent ball of light, but he did not know what it was. Taking a deep breath, he temporarily suppressed the anger in his heart. Forgetting the unhappiness, Chumu recalled the intermediate body transformation technique. Just like the primary body transformation technique, the intermediate body transformation technique also had 9 movements. After carefully pondering over them, Chumu began to practice according to the first movement. Every movement was fixed for 15 minutes. After completing the 6th movement, the 7th movement became incomparably difficult. Chumu didn't panic. He stopped and practiced a round of swordsmanship. After washing up, he felt refreshed and comfortable. He sat cross-legged on the wooden bed. He didn't practice the chi training technique because even if he did, it wouldn't have much of an effect. It was better to spend his time on other things. After calming his mind and clearing his mind of distracting thoughts, Chumu recalled his battle with the crimson-eyed Wolf King. That battle had been extremely fierce and dangerous. Chumu had done his best, risking the possibility of being killed by the flame claw. It was as if he was dancing on the tip of the sword. He had seized the opportunity to break through the armor of the crimson-eyed Wolf King. Because the crimson-eyed Wolf King had dodged, his sword had pierced through its forehead. Otherwise, if he had pierced through the eye, whether or not he would have been able to kill the crimson-eyed Wolf King was still unknown. In general, to kill the crimson-eyed Wolf King, strength and luck played a part. Chumu couldn't help but think of the crimson-eyed Wolf King's beast skill, the flame claw. A terrifying heat filled the air. Sand and stones melted in an instant. If it landed on his body, it would be enough to burn him to ashes within 3 breaths. recalling the terrifying flames of the flame claw. Chumu felt as if he was once again immersed in it. He felt his entire body heat up, his mouth dry, and his consciousness entered a strange state. He fell into an epiphany. Fire! Fire that filled the sky! The flames surged and burned wildly, spreading out in all directions. There was nowhere to hide. It was as if everything was in the fire, and the fire wanted to burn everything into ashes, to turn it into nothingness. Incomparably scorching, terrifyingly high temperature, astonishingly burning. Chumu felt as if his body was being burned to ashes by the terrifying flames. He disappeared, leaving behind only a speck of spiritual light floating in the sea of flames. Time passed slowly. Unknowingly, his little light seemed to have been assimilated by the flames and became a part of them. At this moment, he once again felt that his body was in perfect condition. You have comprehended the beginner level of the power of fire. You have received 1,000 genius points. A fleeting voice sounded in his mind. Immediately, the number of genius points behind Chumu's name on the Galaxy Genius list returned to 6,000. He was still at the top of the list. This change was shocking. The time in the Heavenly Azure virtual world was different from the time in the outside world. A few days in the Heavenly Azure virtual world were only a few minutes in the outside world. Therefore, the changes on the Galaxy Genius list were seen in a short period of time. I have already grasped the power of fire. Chumu was a little surprised. There was some element of luck involved in controlling the power of fire. It was beyond his expectations, but all in all, it was a good thing. At that moment, the sky gradually brightened. Chumu opened the door of the wooden house and strode out with the scarlet blood sword in his hand. Not long after, the first rays of the morning sun shone, indicating the arrival of dawn. At that moment, many geniuses had already come out of the wooden houses and were about to leave the Dark Knight tribe. Chumu quickened his pace and rushed out of the Dark Knight tribe like a cheetah. He crossed the wooden bridge and quickly entered the wilderness, heading towards the Wolf Valley. If there were no accidents, Zhou Xinglong and the others were most likely still in the Wolf Valley. His stomach growled. He hadn't eaten for a whole night and felt a little hungry. However, he didn't have any hollow chi to buy food, and he had entered the wilderness. He could only endure it for now. After he found Zhou Xinglong and the others, he would naturally get food and water to fill his stomach. The night faded and dawn arrived. The berserk red-eyed wolves gradually returned to normal. Chumu moved stealthily and encountered a few red-eyed wolves. He unsheathed the scarlet blood sword and killed the red-eyed wolves one by one like red lightning. After absorbing the blood of the red-eyed wolves, the scarlet blood sword's red light became even more demonic. Chumu also absorbed a few strands of level 1 hollow chi and turned it into inner chi. He recovered to stage 3 inner chi. When Chumu arrived at the entrance of the Wolf Valley, he had already recovered to stage 5 inner chi. As his strength gradually recovered, he comprehended the power of fire and had the scarlet blood sword. His strength would only be stronger than before. Walking quickly into the Wolf Valley, Chumu didn't rush in. Instead, he carefully observed the traces on the ground. Based on the traces at the entrance of the Wolf Valley, Chumu deduced that up until now, other than himself, the other 7 people and Zhou Xinglong's group had entered the Wolf Valley. However, the traces of the 2 groups covered each other. Chumu couldn't distinguish which traces belonged to which group. Should I wait here? Or... After thinking for a while, Chumu took a step forward. If he waited here, he might be able to meet Zhou Xinglong and the others, but it probably wouldn't be that fast. It would be a pure waste of time. He came back to Wolf Valley with the intention of revenge, but he also wanted to recover his strength and improve. Following one of the traces, he quickly moved forward. The red-eyed wolves in the Wolf Valley seemed to be endless. After a night of death, they all came back to life. Not long after, Chumu killed another 4 red-eyed wolves. In terms of inner chi, he had recovered to stage 9. Because of the blood absorption, the scarlet blood sword's red light was even brighter and more demonic. I didn't expect the Wolf Valley to be so dangerous at night. Fortunately, Senior Zhou's strength has increased greatly. Otherwise, we might have been wiped out. A laugh came from afar and entered Chu Mu's ears. A smile appeared on his face. Although it was dangerous, we also gained a lot. Now that we have all reached the first sky of Qi cultivation, our strength has increased. Senior Zhou is also closer to the second sky. Fortunately, I got the wolf shadow armor. Zhou Xinglong pretended to be humble. Chu Mu quickly ran in the direction of the voice. Not long after, he met up with Zhou Xinglong and the others. Perhaps because of the danger at night, Zhou Xinglong's group was left with only 4 people. Every one of them was at the first sky of Qi cultivation and had comprehended sword will. Zhou Xinglong had even grasped a type of power of the heavens and earth. "It's you." As soon as they met, Zhou Xinglong and the other 3 stared at Chu Mu, who was running in front of them. They were stunned. Soon after, a sinister smile appeared on their faces. "Are you here for revenge? If you were to focus on hunting void beasts, I might have let you go. But if you are here for revenge, then be prepared to be killed again." Zhou Xinglong smiled sinisterly. "I'll let you experience the power of this wolf shadow armor." As soon as he finished speaking, Zhou Xinglong suddenly raised his left hand. Numerous cold rays instantly shot out, straight as a line, towards Chu Mu. They were like arrows piercing through the air. The other 3 also stomped on the ground and dashed over. They unsheathed their sword light, which was sharp and dazzling. Zhou Xinglong activated the wolf shadow armor's power of the wolf. The scarlet-eyed wolf pattern on the wolf shadow armor shone. A strange power surged through his body, causing Zhou Xinglong's speed to increase by 30%. Like a gust of wind, he followed closely behind the numerous cold rays. He unsheathed his sword, and a dazzling sword light rose. It was like a rainbow piercing through the sun. The sword pierced towards Chu Mu, as if it could pierce through steel. The moment the 4 attacked, they displayed their powerful strength and tacit cooperation. In an instant, Chu Mu was surrounded and attacked. The situation was critical. Chu Mu did not panic in the slightest. He was calm and composed, and a smile hung on the corner of his mouth. Several cold rays shot out first. Suddenly, he raised his right hand, and a red light exploded. The scarlet blood sword was unsheathed, and with a slash, several cold rays shot towards the 3 people. With a bang, dust flew up. Chu Mu's body was like an arrow, shooting straight towards Zhou Xinglong. Compared to Zhou Xinglong, who had activated the power of the wolf, his speed was not slow at all. The scarlet blood sword was like a scarlet lightning that tore through the night. It was extremely overbearing, violent, and swift. Shwa, 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 shwa. In an instant, the 3 slashes had cut through the 3 black iron swords, as if they were vegetables. The scarlet sword light attacked the 3 sword geniuses, and the sword pierced out again like a meteor chasing after the moon. Zhou Xinglong was shocked. He hurriedly swung his sword, wanting to split Chu Mu's sword. When the 2 swords collided, Zhou Xinglong's black iron sword was broken. The scarlet sword light instantly pierced through Zhou Xinglong's forehead. "The next time I see you, I will kill you without hesitation," Chu Mu said and pulled out his sword. Chapter 1224. Zhou Xinglong's ranking dropped in an instant. From then on, Chu Mu had one more enemy. However, he did not mind at all. His intention in entering the Azure Sky virtual world was not to fight, but if someone wanted to deal with him, he would fight back fiercely to let them know that he was not to be trifled with. After putting on the wolf shadow armor, it was adjusted according to Chu Mu's figure. It fit him very well, and he seemed to have an additional, vigorous aura. Zhou Xinglong and the other 3 left behind a lot of food. Although it was simple and tasted average, it was rich in nutrients and energy. After a full meal, Chu could still eat the rest for 2 days. Next, I'll restore my inner chi to the first layer of heaven and then enter the inner valley, Chu said. The Wolf Valley was divided into the outer valley and the inner valley. The outer valley was the territory of the crimson-eyed wolves, and the inner valley was the territory of the iron-backed wolves. The iron-backed wolves were a Tier 2 virtual beast. Chu quickly entered the outer valley and headed for the crimson-eyed wolf king. He remembered that there were hundreds of strong crimson-eyed wolves gathered there. With his current strength, he should be able to deal with them if he was careful. The crimson-eyed wolf king had not reappeared, and the number of crimson-eyed battle wolves had increased from 12 to 8. There were only about 60 other strong crimson-eyed wolves. There were fewer of them. As long as he was not heavily surrounded, he should not be injured. Moreover, he had the wolf shadow armor, which could completely resist the claws of the crimson-eyed wolves. As for the claws of the crimson-eyed battle wolves, even if they could break through the wolf shadow armor, they would not be able to hurt Chu. He leaped and landed. Instantly, the crimson-eyed battle wolves and the rest of the crimson-eyed wolves all turned to look at him. Their scarlet eyes made one's hair stand on end. Chilling howls rang out. The crimson-eyed wolves had set Chu as their target. They rushed towards him, their ferocious aura billowing. The scene of dozens of crimson-eyed wolves running was very shocking. Chu leaned forward and channeled strength into his legs. With a burst of strength, he shot forward in the dust and actually dashed towards the dozens of strong crimson-eyed wolves. It was as if 2 armies were facing off against each other. However, one army only had a single person, while the other army had dozens of strong and ferocious crimson-eyed wolves. The difference in numbers was extremely great. However, Chu, who was all alone, had an extremely fierce aura. He was like a divine sword that had been unsheathed, and he was not inferior to the ferocious aura of the dozens of red-eyed wolves. Their auras collided and approached each other. The scarlet blood sword was unsheathed. The crimson sword light was like a bolt of red lightning streaking across the dark sky. It made a tearing sound, and the red light was dazzling. His sword was unsheathed, slicing through the body of a crimson-eyed wolf before continuing forward. It was like a hot knife through butter, unstoppable and unstoppable. Everything would be destroyed. At this moment, it was as if Chu was the ferocious wolf, and the group of red-eyed wolves were weak lambs. The dozens of crimson-eyed wolves surrounded Chu. They were so densely packed that no wind could pass through them. One could only vaguely see the dazzling red sword light flickering like lightning within the pack of wolves. The terrifying tearing sound of air was sharp and ear-piercing. A few claw shadows pierced through the air and landed on Chu-Mu's body. However, they were completely blocked by the wolf shadow armor. They could not break through it and could not even damage it. Chu-Mu only needed to focus on dodging the attacks of the 8 crimson-eyed battle wolves. He also needed to be careful not to let the attacks hit his head. This greatly reduced the pressure he faced. The crimson blood sword was indeed very sharp. It did not need to be infused with sword intent, nor did it need to be infused with the gold force. It did not even need to use the power of vibration. The tip of the sword could easily cut through the skin of the crimson-eyed wolves, as if it was cutting through a thin piece of paper. Even the tough skin of the crimson-eyed battle wolves could be cut open. However, with the support of sword intent, it was as easy as cutting through a thin piece of paper. Chu-Mu concluded that the crimson blood sword, with the support of sword intent and gold force, was enough to cut through the skin of the crimson-eyed wolf king. Slash, slash, slash. The last crimson-eyed battle wolf had also died under Chu-Mu's crimson blood sword. Streaks of void chi emerged from the carcasses of the crimson-eyed wolves. There were more than 60 strong crimson-eyed wolves, so there were more than 60 streaks of first-grade void chi. As for the 8 crimson-eyed battle wolves, there were more than 30 streaks of first-grade void chi. This pack of crimson-eyed wolves had given Chu-Mu exactly 100 streaks of void chi. 100 streaks of void chi. Chu Mu absorbed them one by one and refined them into inner qi. After refining one streak of void qi, his inner qi reached the peak of level 9. It was daytime now. Chu Mu did not dare to practice the beginner qi cultivation technique in case he was attacked again. Therefore, he absorbed another 10 streaks of first-grade void qi. His inner qi shrank, expanded, and exploded, becoming pure. The familiar feeling returned once again. His talent points increased by 1,000 to 7,000. Zhu Tiantong, who was in second place, increased his talent points to 5,000 not long ago. Qin Gang also increased his talent points. Now, the gap between him and Chu Mu was widened again. Zhu Tiantong, Qin Gang, and the others already knew why Yang Xian's ranking fell. However, they were in a hurry to improve themselves. It was impossible for them to waste time looking for Chu Mu. For the time being, they put their revenge on hold. Now that they knew Chu Mu's talent points had increased, their faces were a little gloomy. Being trampled on by such a person always felt very uncomfortable, especially when it was someone who had an indirect grudge against them. It was even more uncomfortable. "Tell the others to pay attention to Chu Mu's whereabouts," Zhu Tiantong said. Among the more than 30,000 people in the Dark Knight tribe, there were nearly 1,000 disciples of the Dark Knight sword sect. It was more than 4 times the number of the 5 Elements sword sect. It was the largest group in the Dark Knight tribe. These people had their own talent points. They formed small teams and were distributed in different parts of the wilderness. But now, due to the limited conditions, it was difficult for the small teams to communicate with each other. They were not well informed. His qi cultivation had recovered to the first sky, and his body cultivation was at level 6. There were still 89 strands of level 1 illusory qi left. After thinking for a while, Chu Mu left 9 strands of level 1 illusory qi around the fingers of his left hand, and absorbed the other 80 strands. A strong heat flow surged in his body and rushed to his limbs and bones. His body moved without wind, and his black hair fluttered. An aura rose from Chu Mu's body. It was getting stronger and stronger, and sand and pebbles were flying everywhere. First, he improved his body cultivation to the peak of level 9 of the first sky. After consuming 40 strands of level 1 illusory qi from Chu Mu, the remaining 40 strands of level 1 illusory qi were converted into internal qi, which kept circulating in his meridians. After absorbing all of them, his qi cultivation had reached level 4 of the first sky. His strength was even more powerful. Even if he encountered the red-eyed Wolf King again, he could easily kill it without suffering any damage. To Chu Mu, the outer valley of the Wolf Valley was no longer a challenge. He did not have the hobby of bullying the weak. His goal was to challenge the strong. Moving forward, Chu Mu soon found the entrance to the inner valley behind a few boulders. The reason he could find it so quickly was related to the map in the illustrated handbook of low-grade illusory beasts that the shopkeeper of the bookstore gave him. After passing through the long and narrow passageway and entering the inner valley of the Wolf Valley, Chu Mu felt the wildness in the air. It was at least 10 times stronger than in the outer valley. This was the first time someone had entered the inner valley. The ironback wolves inside had never been killed before. The moment Chu Mu appeared, he immediately discovered that he was being stared at. 2 pairs of oily green eyes were icy cold, causing people to feel a chill. It was a low growl unique to wolves, sounding extremely ferocious. Its green skin had a metallic texture, and its nose bridge was wrinkled. As it growled, it trembled, making its green eyes seem even more ferocious. Its fur was gray. Compared to the red-eyed wolf, it was sparser and looked somewhat soft. Its most distinctive feature was its back. It was very prominent, looking like a dragon's bone. It was a rank 2 illusory beast, an ironback wolf. When the 2 ironback wolves discovered Chu Mu, they let out a low growl and rushed over. They were extremely fast, like 2 gusts of wind. They were at least 50% faster than the red-eyed wolf. Chu Mu also stared at the two ironback wolves. His eyes flickered with an incomparably sharp light. He adjusted his breathing and was ready to attack at any time. The ironback wolves were rank 2 illusory beasts. Their claws were extremely sharp and might injure the wolf shadow armor. Chu Mu was not willing to take them head-on. In a short span of 3 breaths, the two ironback wolves were like 2 gusts of wind. They actually knew how to coordinate with each other and attacked Chu Mu from the left and right. The scarlet blood sword was unsheathed. Its red light exploded, tearing through the dark sky like lightning. He slashed at the ironback wolf on the left. The ironback wolf's reaction was extremely fast. Its body paused, causing the scarlet blood sword to brush past its nose. Then it suddenly pounced. Its terrifying claws attacked with a gust of wind, almost tearing Chu Mu apart. The ironback wolf on the right had already reached him with its claws. His footsteps crisscrossed, and he instantly dodged. The scarlet blood sword once again slashed out, breaking apart the claws of the ironback wolf on the left and slashing at the ironback wolf on the right. The ironback wolf's reaction was fast, but it was still a step too slow. Its head was sliced by the terrifying sword. Amidst an obscure sound, its green skin was cut open and blood spurted out. It did not die, but its ferocious nature was unleashed. The vibrational energy was activated, and Chu Mu slashed out again. The terrifying energy instantly split open the ironback wolf's skull. The other ironback wolf attacked, but Chu Mu seized the opportunity to spin his body and dodge. Borrowing the force of his body's rotation, he slashed out with a tyrannical sword. His sword intent, metal energy, and vibrational energy were all added to his sword. The incomparably sharp sword broke open the ironback wolf's body, cutting 3 inches in from its neck all the way down to its tail. The two ironback wolves allowed Chu Mu to understand the strength of the ironback wolves. Compared to the scarlet-eyed battle wolves, they were indeed much stronger. However, compared to the scarlet-eyed wolf king, they were still a little weaker. However, this was normal. Although the scarlet-eyed wolf king was a rank 1 void beast, it was still the king of the scarlet-eyed wolf clan. It was not strange for it to be stronger than a rank 2 void beast. The biggest reason for being able to kill the two ironback wolves so easily was the scarlet blood sword. Its sharpness was astonishing. If he had used the black iron sword, even if he could kill the two ironback wolves in the end, he would have to pay a price. Chapter 1225. At noon, the scorching sun hung high in the sky, emitting thousands of rays of golden light. Each ray was like a sword, piercing through the sky and sprinkling over the earth. Colorful halos flowed within the light swords. The stream was clear, connecting the inner and outer valleys. A figure squatted beside the stream, cupping the water to wash his face before taking a big gulp. After eating his rations, filling his stomach, and drinking his water, Chu Mu sat beside the stream, looking around and looking at the light in the sky. When it was time to rest, he still needed to rest. There was a balance between tension and relaxation. Otherwise, it would be detrimental to his cultivation. Since entering the inner valleys, Chu Mu had killed 6 ironback wolves and obtained 6 strands of second-grade void chi. He had absorbed and refined these 6 strands of second-grade void chi into inner chi, allowing his inner chi to reach the peak of the first heavenly layer. Now he was only 1 step away from the second heavenly layer. This step was not so easy to take, but Chu Mu was confident that he could complete this step in the inner valleys of the Wolf Valley. After resting for a while, Chu Mu did not get up, but drew his sword and waved it. Now that he had mastered the power of metal and the power of fire, he could only add the power of metal to his sword during battle. He could also add the power of fire, but he still couldn't add the power of metal and the power of fire at the same time, which was very difficult. If he could add the power of metal, fire, and vibration to his sword, the power of each sword would increase significantly. Its destructive power would not be inferior to a first-grade sword art. Chu Mu was working hard in this direction. The The more he cultivated and improved, the more he found that there were more aspects to improve. Gradually, he began to feel that there was not enough time. After trying for a while, he was still unable to coexist the power of metal and fire at the same time. If he could not solve this problem, he could forget about creating a sword art that mainly used the power of metal and fire, alternating the use of the two powers, trying to coexist as much as possible. Maybe when the time comes, I can really do it. Muttering to himself, he got up, sheathed the scarlet blood sword, and continued forward. It was unknown whether Chumu's luck was good or bad. This time he encountered 3 ironback wolves. No, it should be 2 ironback wolves, plus an even taller and stronger ironback wolf with dark green skin. It was an elite ironback wolf called the ironback blue wolf. The ironback blue wolf and the 2 ironback wolves dashed over. Chumu also dashed over, rapidly approaching. His body leaned forward, and the 5 fingers of his right hand moved subconsciously. His legs almost turned into rolling wheels, bringing up a trail of smoke and dust, like a giant python turning over. With a chi sound, like an arrow leaving the bow, a dazzling and demonic red light flickered. It was incomparably violent. As the sword leaped, it was like a thunderbolt, incomparably fast and incomparably sharp. With a slight sound, the sword left a faint, golden mark in the air. The ironback blue wolf's reaction was extremely fast. It leapt up, causing Chumu's sword to miss. Then it pounced in the air, its terrifying claws drawing several scars in the air, glinting with a biting cold light. Lowering his body, his strength erupted once again. His speed suddenly increased as he rushed forward. Not only did he cause the ironback blue wolf's claws to miss, he also rushed towards the 2 ironback wolves. The scarlet blood sword exploded with a tyrannical might. The sword intent, metal force, and vibration force all added together. With a chi sound, the sword cut open the body of one of the ironback wolves. His whole body rushed forward, heavily stomping on the ground. Dust flew into the air. His body paused, and he abruptly twisted his body. His strength erupted, and his sword pierced out once again. The red light was blazing like lightning. Just as the ironback wolf turned around, the demonic and dazzling red sword light arrived like a bolt of lightning. With a chi sound, it directly pierced through the ironback wolf's neck. Of the 2 ironback wolves, one was killed, and the other was heavily injured. It did not have much fighting strength left. Chumu quickly followed up with another strike, killing it. Then he faced the ironback blue wolf directly. The scarlet blood sword trembled. With an ear-piercing sword cry, it turned into a red bolt of lightning with a whoosh. It was incomparably demonic as it brazenly pierced towards the ironback blue wolf. The ironback blue wolf's green eyes narrowed slightly. It madly rushed over, raising its sharp claws and slashing at the red light. The huge force of the collision caused the sword to tremble violently. It also caused Chumu's forward momentum to pause. The ironback blue wolf's body also trembled. The power of Chumu's sword was an explosion of inner chi as well as physical strength. It was extremely powerful. The ironback blue wolf felt a stabbing pain from its claws, but its ferocious nature made it ignore it. It suddenly leapt up and viciously bit at Chumu. A fishy smell assailed his nostrils. Shifting his feet, he quickly dodged and slashed out with the scarlet blood sword. Following that in the battle with the ironback blue wolf, Chumu's metal force and fire force intertwined and supported the scarlet blood sword, constantly blocking and counterattacking. The ironback blue wolf's strength was much stronger than the red-eyed wolf king's. Its skin was also tougher than the wolf king's. Even with the scarlet blood sword sharpness and the support of the 3 forces, it was difficult to cause much damage to the ironback blue wolf. The current situation was slightly better than when he fought the red-eyed wolf king. After all, the ironback blue wolf had not mastered any beast techniques. If it had, then it would be troublesome. Even so, the ironback blue wolf was still rather miserable. Its body was covered in wounds, dripping with blood. It was a ghastly sight, as if Chu Mu was abusing it. The ironback blue wolf had an amazing recovery ability. As time passed, the wounds on its body healed little by little. This was a very good opponent. Chu Mu was using it to train his swordsmanship and everything else, working hard to increase his combat ability. When he felt that it was about time, Chu Mu seized an opportunity and used the armor-piercing sword technique. The golden-red sword light condensed into a line, piercing through the sky. In an instant, it tore through the iron-back blue wolf's skull and pierced through its body, killing it. As expected, killing the first iron-back blue wolf brought Chu Mu some benefits. Other than the 4 rank 2 void chi, there was also an orange ball of light. Chu Mu quickly grabbed the orange ball of light and absorbed it. Suddenly, information appeared, and a figure appeared in his mind. It quickly stepped out, step by step. It looked very delicate and varied. Intermediate step technique. When Chu Mu finished digesting the contents of the intermediate step technique, he felt that his understanding of the step technique had deepened. He followed the figure in his mind and took a few steps. He felt more agile and flexible with more variations. His step technique attainment directly increased. Footwork was also divided into beginner, intermediate, and advanced. There was no rule stating that one had to first learn beginner footwork in order to learn intermediate footwork, because beginner footwork was already included in intermediate footwork. All of them were included in advanced footwork. Getting it was one thing, and using it was another. Chu Mu started practicing on the spot. His comprehension was very strong, and his control of his body was amazing. Advancing, retreating, left, right, and crisscrossing, he quickly grasped the strength and depth of each force. In just half an hour, Chu Mu had mastered the intermediate step technique. If he wanted to be more familiar with it, he could only improve it in battle. This time, not only did he get an intermediate step technique, he also got 6 rank 2 void chi. He only needed 10 rank 2 void chi to break through to the second heavenly layer of chi. If he had 20 rank 2 void chi, then he could reach the second heavenly layer of chi. After this battle, some of his strength and inner chi were consumed. Chu Mu did not absorb the 6 rank 2 void chi. Instead, he sat down and recovered his strength and inner chi. After a period of time, his strength recovered. Chu Mu wrapped the 6 rank 2 void chi around the fingers of his left hand. After gathering 10 rank 2 void chi, he would absorb them in one go and break through the bottleneck, reaching the second heavenly layer. The Wolf Valley did not lack ironback wolves. Chu Mu, who had obtained the intermediate step technique, was like a tiger that had grown wings. 15 minutes later, he got another 4 rank 2 void chi, a total of 10 rank 2 void chi. After finding a relatively safe place, Chu Mu sat down cross-legged and directly absorbed the 10 streams of rank 2 void chi. They turned into a strong flow of heat that flowed throughout his body. Chu Mu hurriedly circulated the elementary chi cultivating technique and guided this strong flow of heat into his inner chi. This allowed his inner chi, which had already reached the peak of first heavenly layer, to reach a higher level. A roar sounded. His consciousness was in a trance and returned to normal in an instant. Then, Chu Mu looked inside himself and found that the inner chi in his meridians was rushing to his dantian. Before the first heavenly layer of chi training, the inner chi was scattered in the meridians. At the first heavenly layer, the inner chi was collected into one and also existed in the meridians. At the second heavenly layer, the inner chi was poured into the dantian. It was no longer rootless and had a sense of stability. The inner chi of the second heavenly layer was purer and more powerful. Chi training has reached the second heavenly layer. You have gained 2,000 genius points. A fleeting voice sounded. Chu Mu's genius points increased from 7,000 to 9,000. In a spurt of energy, I will also break through to the second heavenly layer. Secretly, he got up and exhaled a mouthful of turbid qi. Chu Mu made the first movement of the intermediate body refining technique. After making the first movement, he held it for a quarter of an hour. When the heat flow reached a certain level, Chu Mu quickly changed to the second movement and continued to hold it for a quarter of an hour, making the heat flow even more intense. When practicing the body refining technique, his eyes could still see ahead and his perception could still feel the movements around him. However, if he was attacked, he would have to stop the body refining technique. There would not be any harm. In this aspect, it was better than the qi training technique. It was just that it took more time to practice, so there were pros and cons. Perhaps Chu Mu's luck was good. Up until the 9th movement, there were no iron back wolves around him, nor did he encounter any attacks. On the 9th movement, the heat flow was incomparably strong. It was as if the water of a river was unceasingly washing through his muscles. Over and over again, each movement gave Chu Mu a feeling. It was as if the muscles all over his body were being washed by this heat flow, becoming even more compact, even more tenacious, and even more powerful. A feeling of tightness gradually pervaded the air. When the heat flow was at its strongest, it suddenly exploded. It was as if a small dragon was attacking his limbs and bones. A powerful aura suddenly erupted from Chu Mu's body. The impact sent the surrounding sand and stones flying. It was as if there was a flame burning on Chu Mu's body. Body refining has reached the second heavenly layer. You have gained 2,000 genius points. The fleeting voice sounded again. The outside world was shaken because of this. Chapter 1226. The flow of time in the azure sky illusionary world was different from the outside world. A few days in the azure sky illusionary world were only a few hours in the outside world. Within a few hours, the Galaxy Genius ranking had changed rapidly, shocking everyone. What's going on? Why did it increase by 2,000 points? The people of the Night Nether Galaxy were all shocked. They stared with wide eyes at the name at the top of the list and the number of genius points next to it. 11,000. Zhu Tiantong, who was in second place, had 5,000 points. Qin Gang, who was in third place, also had 5,000 points. Between 5,000 and 11,000, there was a difference of 6,000 points. This was almost an insurmountable gap. Zhu Tiantong and Qin Gang's faces became very unsightly. They were left so far behind in such a short time. It was unimaginable and unacceptable. Deputy Sect Leader Xiang, this disciple of the 5-element sword sect, is not bad, right? Baiqiong's voice was filled with joy and a hint of mockery. This made Xiang Ye's face turn ugly. For a moment, even with Xiang Ye's thick skin, he felt his face burning, as if he had been slapped twice. He didn't know what to say. No matter what he said, the truth was right in front of him. There was a gap of 6,000 genius points, not 1 or 2,000. If he wanted to catch up, the difficulty would be as high as the sky. Basically, if nothing unexpected happened, Zhu Tiantong and Qin Gang were destined to be trampled under Chu Mu's feet. There was no way they could surpass him. The disciples of the 5-element sword sect were all so excited that they almost overturned the mountain peak. The disciples of the Zhan Tian peak all puffed out their chests. They were full of confidence, which made them even more envious. The saints couldn't help but feel a little regretful. Why didn't they try harder to rope in Chu Mu? Even if they couldn't rope him in, they should have tried their best to be on good terms with him. Now, it seemed like there was no chance to rope him in, but it was still possible to be on good terms with him. Then there was an even bigger commotion. Chu Mu, whose points had exceeded 10,000 and reached 11,000, had his name flashing continuously on the Heaven Ascension list. He kept moving up, and finally, miraculously, he reached the 10th place. The first place of the Heaven Ascension list was still Gu Luankong, the second place was still Qin Aoxian, and the third place was still Yang Zhantian. There were no changes. Chu Mu was originally in the 80s, but later on, he dropped out of the Heaven Ascension list. This was because the Heaven Ascension list only recorded 1,000 names. After that, Chumu's name once again rushed up the Heaven Ascension list, and every now and then it would rise a little. The competition on the Heaven Ascension list was much more intense than on the Galaxy Genius list. Rising and falling, the changes were extremely fast. It was not easy for Chumu to be able to go against the current. Now, when he broke through to the second heavenly layer in the Azure Sky virtual world, it took more than 2 hours. However, in the outside world, it was only a very short period of time. In an instant, he had gained 4,000 genius points, causing Chumu's name to seem to have become one with his sword as it shot through the 9 heavens. Cutting through thistles and thorns like a hot knife through butter, he forcibly made his way into the top 10, squeezing out the 10th place. The 10th ranked genius was called Tsuyueshi. She was a proud and arrogant genius. Originally, she had been working hard to improve her ranking. She had rushed to the 10th place and was planning to go higher. However, she didn't expect that someone would push her down to the 11th place. Tsuyueshi's genius points were exactly 10,000. She was 1,000 points away from Chumu and 1,000 points away from the 9th place. As for Gul Wankong, who was at the top of the list, his genius points had reached 16,000. He was far in the lead. Chumu's name entered the 10th place of the Heaven Ascension list and attracted even more attention. Everyone was discussing the background of this person who had suddenly reached the 10th place. He is indeed our 10th God's child. He can compete with the top great emperor's descendants. At the main God's Hall, the elders smiled. The God's child of God's Hall did have an extremely high status. His talent was also the best. However, in this era where Sword God had fallen, the great emperors were the strongest. Those who were chosen by the great emperors to be their descendants were all extraordinarily talented. Some might be slightly weaker than the God's child. Some might be on par with the God's child. But there were also some who were slightly better than the God's child. However, this was not absolute. However, it was a fact that some of the great emperor's descendants were in the top 10. When Chumu reached the 10th place, the other gods' children had not. The most powerful one, Guanlin, had only reached the 13th place. It felt like the top 10 was a watershed. The top 3 was even more so. Good job, youngest. Go, get into the top 3. Feng Guohai was ranked 38th. It was very difficult for him to move up one place. He was a little troubled that no God's child had entered the top 10. Suddenly, he felt that Chumu's ranking had shot up to the 10th place. He was overjoyed. Youngest is so powerful. I can't fall too far behind. The other God's children were motivated, as if they had been greatly motivated and worked even harder. A powerful force surged within his body. As his cultivation base broke through, his thinking speed increased greatly. His thinking ability was enhanced, his 6 senses were sharper, and his reflexes were faster. At this moment, the sun was setting. The color of the blood-red sky gradually faded, invaded by a trace of darkness. The last ray of light disappeared into the western horizon. Night had fallen. The cool breeze blew gently. Waves of wolf howls could be heard from afar. When night fell, the void beasts seemed to have received an unexpected power. They all went berserk, their strength multiplied. The inner valley was more dangerous than the outer valley at night. However, Chumu, whose strength had obviously increased, was not afraid. He continued to move forward. Since night had just fallen, his eyes could still see his surroundings clearly. His sharp gaze swept across the area, taking in everything around him clearly. Today was the 4th day since he had entered the Azure Sky virtual world. There were still more than 20 days before the 1-month deadline. There was more than enough time, and Chumu was not in a hurry. When the time came, if he did not have any first-grade void chi, he would return it to the bookstore owner with second-grade void chi. He would probably be happier. 400 strands of first-grade void chi were equivalent to 40 strands of second-grade void chi. It would not be difficult to kill 40 ironback wolves. With his current strength of the second firmament, killing an ironback blue wolf was not that difficult. After going berserk, the ironback wolf's strength increased at a faster rate, and its wildness increased. As soon as it discovered Chu Mu's figure, it immediately dashed toward him, its demonic aura filling the air. The crimson sword light was like a waterfall that pierced through the sky, tearing apart the thin darkness. The ironback wolf's green eyes were unknowingly covered with a layer of faint red. Chu Mu was not afraid at all, his face as cold as steel. He raised the crimson blood sword, and the demonic red sword light exploded. Even after going berserk at night, the ironback wolf's strength had doubled, but it was still not Chu Mu's opponent. This was because Chu Mu had broken through to the second firmament, and his strength had increased by more and more. Kill. One sword kill. Another strand of second-grade void chi was in his hands. Chu Mu was not arrogant enough to go deep into the inner valley, because he guessed that there would be a wolf king in the inner valley, just like the outer valley. The strength of the ironback wolf king was much stronger than that of the ironback blue wolf, especially at night. Due to going berserk, the ironback wolf king's strength had multiplied, and it was even stronger than a third-grade elite void beast. Other than the ironback wolf king, there might also be many ironback blue wolves and strong ironback wolves. Their numbers were not small. It was better to hunt from the periphery. Encountering an ironback wolf, fighting and killing it, the ironback wolf was a second-grade void beast. After going berserk, its blood seemed to contain even more power. After absorbing it, the crimson blood sword became even more demonic, and the red light was dazzling. At this point, Chu Mu had killed another 10 ironback wolves and obtained 10 strands of second-rank void aura, which he directly absorbed. Unfortunately, after reaching the second layer of the realm, the second-rank void aura's effect on him had once again decreased. Originally, one strand could increase his strength by 500 kilograms. Now, one strand could only increase his strength by 50 kilograms. He had to kill a third-grade void beast and obtain third-grade void chi before he could enjoy another strand of 1,000 gene increase in strength. However, if he wanted to hunt a third-grade void beast, he would have to go deeper into the wilderness. At that time, he would have to make more preparations. Otherwise, going back and forth would waste a lot of time. For now, it was better to obediently hunt second-grade void beasts. 10 strands of second-grade void chi only strengthened Chu Mu's physique a little, reaching half a layer of the second firmament. His strength had reached 21,000 gene, and his strength had increased. There was nothing he could do about it. The difference between the second firmament and the third firmament was 20,000 gene of strength. An increase of 2,000 gene would be considered a layer. They encountered another ironback blue wolf. The berserk ironback blue wolf was twice as strong. Fortunately, Chu Mu's dual cultivation had broken through to the second layer. Otherwise, facing a berserk ironback blue wolf, it would truly be hard to deal with. The ironback wolf was strong, but Chu Mu was stronger. After an intense battle, Chu Mu grasped the opportunity and executed the armor-breaking sword art, killing the ironback wolf. There was nothing he could do about it. The berserk ironback wolf's skin was tougher, and its defense was stronger. It was harder for the crimson blood sword to break through. Good luck came. 6 strands of second-grade void chi and a ball of silver light. He quickly grabbed the ball of silver light and absorbed it. Immediately, information appeared, and a silver figure appeared in his mind, holding a sharp sword. It was a sword art. It was not a special sword art, but a sublimation of the basic sword art. It was an enhancement of the basic sword art. The application of the sword art was more comprehensive, more in-depth, more flexible, and more profound. Medial grade sword art. After obtaining the medial grade sword art, Chu Mu quickly digested it. He felt that his understanding of sword arts had increased by another level. His attainments were deeper, his horizons were broader, and his thoughts were clearer. A medial grade sword art was worth 1,000 strands of second-grade void chi. It was many times more valuable than the 6 strands of second-grade void chi. After absorbing the 6 strands of second-grade void chi, his strength increased by 600 jin, reaching 21,600 jin. He was one step closer to the first layer of the second firmament. Chapter 1227. Unknowingly, it was already late at night. The moon was bright and the stars were sparse. The hook-like moon hung high in the sky, emitting a faint, white brilliance. This brilliance was like water, faintly spreading across the earth. It was as if everything on the ground was covered in a layer of gauze, giving it a hazy sense of beauty. Even so, one's line of sight was greatly affected. Looking into the distance, one could only see vague shadows. After absorbing another 4 strands of second-grade void energy, Chu Mu's body transformation cultivation rose once more. He finally reached the first level of the second layered heavens, possessing 22,000 genes of strength. After absorbing the blood of the ironback wolf, the red color of the scarlet blood sword became even more vibrant. The light it emitted was even more pure and demonic. Perhaps the scarlet blood sword will complete its first evolution here. Chu Mu sat on a boulder, his sword fingers stroking the scarlet blood sword's body. He could feel the traces of icy coldness as he thought to himself. The strength of a swordsman was composed of many aspects. Swords were one of them. If 2 swordsmen were similar in all aspects, but one wielded an ordinary sword and the other wielded a treasure sword, there would be a difference in strength. Just think about it. If someone else's sword could break your sword, leaving you with no sword to use, wouldn't your strength drop by a level? Even if your sword wasn't broken, then if your ordinary sword struck your opponent, you would only be lightly injured or heavily injured. But if you were struck by your opponent's sword, you would definitely be heavily injured or even die on the spot. If the scarlet blood sword could evolve into a 3rd-grade void spirit sword, then it would be much easier to deal with the ironback blue wolf. Perhaps it might even be able to injure the ironback wolf king. Hunting void beasts to obtain void energy was important, but other aspects were also important. After experiencing the ups and downs of these past few days, Chu Mu vaguely grasped some of the intentions of the Azure Sky Void World. It wasn't purely for those who entered to increase their cultivation. Instead, it looked at a person's innate talent, potential, and so on. To put it bluntly, it was composed of various aspects. For example, cultivation, perception, battle talent, and so on. Thus, increasing one's cultivation wasn't the only way. Instead, it was the combination of various aspects that was the way to go. Chu Mu was currently at the entrance to the inner valley. Because of Chu Mu's hunting, there were no ironback blue wolves roaming around here. It was relatively safe, which was conducive to Chu Mu's comprehension. First, he reflected on today's battle. Then he practiced the intermediate footwork and intermediate swordsmanship a few times. Then he combined the intermediate footwork and intermediate swordsmanship. After that, he tried to add the gold force and the fire force to his sword. When he tried, Chu Mu discovered that they could coexist for an extremely short period of time. He was pleasantly surprised by this discovery. Chu Mu didn't know if it was because he had broken through to the 2nd celestial layer, or because he had mastered the intermediate sword art, or both. Seeing hope, Chu Mu worked even harder. He continuously swung his sword, and the scarlet blood sword flashed with a golden light, as well as a red light. That wasn't the red of the scarlet blood sword, but the red of fire energy. In an instant, the golden light and the red light both dissipated. The time they could coexist was too short. After all, the gold force and the fire force were different kinds of energy. They didn't have a relationship with each other. In fact, the fire force countered the gold force, so it was even harder to fuse them. No matter how difficult it was, Chu Mu still had to try. After trying for an hour, he still didn't succeed. The night deepened. Chu Mu put down the scarlet blood sword and rested for a while. He raised his head and looked at the sky. The white moon shone with a pure white radiance that was as cold as water. The sparse starlight flickered like a blink of an eye. The sky was vast and the scenery was distant. Chu Mu relaxed his mind. Unknowingly, he lay down and leaned against a slanted rock, using his left hand as a pillow behind his head. Since entering the azure sky, ethereal world, this was the first time he was so relaxed and carefree. In the distance, wolf howls came one after another. However, they gradually faded away, as if they were drifting, as if they were in a dream. As Zhang Xian watched on, a streak of light suddenly appeared and streaked across the sky, disappearing in the blink of an eye. That was a meteor. Not long after, another meteor streaked across the sky. After a few dozen breaths, a third meteor streaked across the sky. Tonight was like the time of a meteor race. Meteors streaked across the sky one after another. In less than 15 minutes, Chu Mu actually saw 10 meteors streaking across the sky. As he watched, Chu Mu became intoxicated. The sky seemed to have disappeared, leaving only the meteors flashing by. Perhaps it was because he was focused on watching, but the meteors seemed to be magnified in front of him, and their trajectories became clearer. It was burning with raging flames. Those flames were golden red in color and had a terrifyingly high temperature. It was as if it could burn everything into ashes. Within that golden color, there was a terrifying sharpness that seemed to be able to cut through everything. There was nothing that could not be broken. As he watched, Chu Mu's eyes widened. His eyes did not move, as if they were frozen. After a long time, when there were no more meteors in the night sky, Chu Mu's eyes trembled and regained their vigor. He quickly stood up and muttered to himself, as if he was in deep thought. In essence, meteors are actually fragments of meteorites or planets. They contain metal and streak across the sky at high speed. The intense friction with the air will generate heat, producing a terrifyingly high temperature flame. As he muttered to himself, the thoughts in his mind gradually became clearer. Since it is difficult for me to add the power of metal and fire to the sword at the same time, why don't I imitate this method and try it out? Carefully comprehending and constantly simulating, eliminating all kinds of drawbacks, he headed in the right direction. When he was almost done comprehending, Chu Mu once again raised the scarlet blood sword, circulated his energy, and stabbed out. This time, with the power of metal, the sword produced friction with the air. However, due to the speed limit, the temperature produced by the friction was not very high. After thinking for a while, Chu Mu stabbed out again. This time, the speed of the sword was much faster. This was because Chu Mu had used the power of vibration. It instantly surged into his arm, producing a huge driving force, causing the speed of the sword to increase. At the same time, the vibration of the sword body at a high frequency increased the friction between the sword body and the air. In an instant, a pale red flame appeared on the sword body, swaying. However, before Chu Mu could activate the power of fire, the flame had already been extinguished. At least Chu Mu knew that he was going in the right direction, but his control was not enough. He continued to cultivate, swinging out sword after sword. After each swing, he paused for a while to think, allowing his strength to gradually recover. The night gradually faded, and a ray of dawn jumped out from the eastern horizon, announcing the arrival of a new day. Every day, the geniuses were improving. On the Galaxy Genius list, Zhu Tiantong and Qin Gang's talent points had reached 6,000. On the Heaven Ascension list, Su Yuexi's talent points had reached 11,000, the same as Chu Mu. However, because she was one step slower, she was still ranked 11th. Until dawn, Chu Mu still had not succeeded in achieving his goal because it was too difficult. However, after repeated attempts, he became more and more familiar with it. As long as he continued to work hard, it would not take long for him to succeed. At that time, not only would he be able to make every swing of his sword carry 4 types of power, making ordinary sword technique stronger. He was even confident that he would be able to create a new sword technique that contained 3 types of power, a 3rd-grade sword technique. At dawn, Chu Mu stopped cultivating, picked up dry food and water, and ate a full meal. Then he recovered the energy he had used to practice the sword. Today was the 5th day in the Azure virtual world, and the food was almost used up. Tonight he had to return to the Night Tribe. However, before he returned, he wanted to kill more ironback wolves to obtain more virtual chi. If possible, he wanted to see the might of the Ironback Wolf King. He jumped down from the boulder, took a step, and ran quickly toward the depths of the valley. The night passed, and the Ironback wolves came out of their berserk state. Their strength returned to its original level, and they posed no threat to Chu Mu. As if he had entered an uninhabited land, he moved forward. Wherever he passed, no wolf could stop his sword. Not long after, Chu Mu killed another 10 ironback wolves and absorbed 10 strands of 2nd-grade virtual chi to strengthen his body and increase his strength to 23,000 caddies. The higher one's cultivation, the harder it was to improve, because more resources were needed. From nothingness to the 1st celestial layer, and then from the 1st celestial layer to the 2nd celestial layer, it was only 10,000 caddies. However, from the 2nd celestial layer to the 3rd celestial layer, it was 20,000 caddies, and from the 3rd celestial layer to the 4th celestial layer, it was 40,000 caddies. Another ironback blue wolf. This ironback blue wolf that didn't go berserk didn't take more than 2 or 3 strikes before it was cleanly killed by Chu Mu. Chu Mu, who had mastered intermediate footwork and sword arts, was even more agile, and his sword arts were even sharper. Unfortunately, this ironback wolf only provided 4 strands of 2nd-grade virtual chi, and did not provide any light balls. For strands of 2nd-grade virtual chi was better than nothing. After absorbing them, Chu Mu continued to move forward. Now, when he used his sword to kill ironback wolves, he would often try to find a better way to combine the power of gold and fire. Fortunately, the strength of the ironback wolves was low and could not pose a threat to him. This allowed Chu Mu to be more relaxed and try. Although he hadn't succeeded, Chu Mu was able to create a sword technique by chance. It was a 1st-rank sword technique based on the power of fire. Unfortunately, he didn't obtain any talent points. Chu Mu guessed that it was because he had created a 2nd-rank sword technique that he couldn't obtain any talent points for sword techniques lower than 2nd rank. If this was true, then after creating a 3rd-rank sword technique, he wouldn't be able to obtain any talent points for creating a 2nd-rank sword technique. Using this 1st-grade sword art as a foundation, Chu Mu integrated the power of vibration. After dozens of attempts, he successfully created a new 2nd-grade sword art. Self-created 2nd-grade sword art successful, received 2,000 talent points. The fleeting voice sounded again. Then, on the Heaven Ascension list, Chu Mu's ranking directly rose, squeezing the 9th place down. He had the same number of talent points as the 8th place, 13,000 points. When this sword was slashed out, the sword seemed to transform into a flame bombardment. Then there was a 2nd bombardment, which Chu Mu named Double Flame Kill. As the name suggested, it was a sword attack with 2 layers of flames. Chapter 1228. After finishing the last of the rations, Chu Mu continued to hunt down more ironback wolves, obtaining even more rank 2 void energy. He directly absorbed it, and his body cultivation increased, reaching level 2 3rd layer of the sky. His luck was not bad. When he killed the 6th ironback blue wolf, he obtained another ball of light, which contained an intermediate movement technique. The sky gradually darkened. Now, even if he had the strength to stay, he could not because there was no more food. If only he had a spatial ring or a spatial wristband. That way he could carry more food. It would be more convenient. Quickly turning around, he flew towards the exit of the inner valley. Passing through the long passage and returning to the outer valley, Chu Mu was stared at by a pair of cruel, cold, and sharp eyes. Looking at the eyes, Chu Mu was delighted. It was the red-eyed Wolf King. "My luck is not bad," Chu Mu muttered to himself, and immediately ran towards the red-eyed Wolf King. The red-eyed Wolf King also leapt, landing on the ground. Like a gust of wind, it swept towards Chu Mu. The newly born red-eyed Wolf King did not have the slightest impression of Chu Mu, because it was not the same one from before. The red-eyed Wolf King's strength was undoubtedly the strongest within the red-eyed Wolf clan. However, compared to the iron-backed blue wolf, there was still a gap if it did not use any beast skills. However, if it used a beast skill, its strength was tyrannical, and it could heavily injure the iron-backed blue wolf. But even the berserk iron-backed blue wolf was not Chu Mu's opponent, let alone the red-eyed Wolf King. Anxious to return, Chu Mu did not bother to deal with it. Instead, he directly released his strength. Rank 2 sword skill, flame double kill. The scarlet blood sword struck out like a bolt of lightning. Flames filled the air, and the power of fire was activated, forming 2 layers of flames. Almost simultaneously, they bombarded the red-eyed Wolf King's head. The terrifyingly high temperature burned, igniting the needle-like black fur on the red-eyed Wolf King's body. Its tough skin was also cut open by the scarlet blood sword. With another strike, the red-eyed Wolf King was killed. 20 strands of rank 1 void energy, and 1 strand of rank 2 void energy. Other than that, there was a ball of light. As long as there was a ball of light, there must be something good. The ball of light was transparent, and there was something inside. After grabbing the ball of light, Chu Mu crushed the ball of light and absorbed it. Immediately, his originally broken cloth shoes disappeared and were replaced by a pair of exquisite wolf leather shoes. Chu Mu felt that his footsteps seemed to have become lighter. The wolf shadow shoes were the same as the wolf shadow armor. They were second-grade spirit armor, and their effect was to increase one's walking or running speed by 10%. They only needed to be worn and did not need to be activated. Not far away, a group of people stared at Chu Mu in shock. The Wolf King that they didn't dare to provoke was killed so easily. Someone who could kill the red-eyed Wolf King so easily was definitely not someone they could handle. Not to mention provoking him, they could only pray that this person wouldn't attack them and wouldn't steal the red-eyed wolves they wanted to kill. Chu Mu now looked down on this pack of red-eyed wolves. He only swept his eyes over the crowd and ignored them. He once again took a step forward and quickly ran away. Wearing the wolf shadow shoes, his speed increased by 10%, making him even faster. Seeing Chu Mu leave quickly, the group of people let out a sigh of relief. But soon, a question popped up in their minds. Where did this terrifying guy come from? Chu Mu didn't care whether the inner valley was exposed or not. Based on the current situation of the Night Dark tribe, rank 1 void beasts were their main targets. Even Zhu Tiantong, who was ranked 2nd, was still in the first sky. Of course, with his and Chen Gang's strength, they could already kill rank 2 void beasts alone. However, they were moving in a group, so they didn't think too much about it. Rushing out of the Wolf Valley, they flew towards the Night Dark tribe. Finally, when night fell, they approached the wooden bridge. In the Night Dark tribe, the lights were lit up one after another. Returning to the Night Dark tribe after 2 days and 1 night, he didn't know why, but he felt warm. It was as if he was alone in the Wolf Valley, isolated from the rest of the world. Exhaling, Chu Mu stopped sighing and walked onto the wooden bridge. Just as he was about to enter the Night Dark tribe, trouble came again. A group of people with cold or gloomy expressions blocked Chu Mu's path, not allowing him to cross the wooden bridge and enter Dark Night tribe. These people's gazes swept over Chu Mu's body, revealing shock, envy, and jealousy. The wolf shadow armor and wolf shadow shoes were flashy and practical. Compared to the coarse clothes he was wearing, it was like a chicken and a dog compared to a phoenix. Among this group of people, there were some familiar faces, such as Chiu Minglei and Yang Xian. Especially these two. Their eyes were filled with hatred and killing intent when they looked at Chumu. Chumu, it's time to settle the score between you and the Night Dark tribe. The leader of the group laughed coldly. He was tall and muscular, and his aura was vigorous. He was very intimidating. Draw a path. Chumu indifferently responded. You're a brave man. I admire you, but you have to pay the price. The leader was Chen Gang, ranked third on the Galaxy Genius ranking. This time he just happened to return to the Night Underworld tribe. He had just arrived when Chumu arrived. His gaze fell on Chumu's left finger. There were 29 strands of rank 1 void aura there. The fluctuations they emitted were like a fat lamb attracting a hungry wolf. Although you're ranked first on the Galaxy Genius roll, Brother Zhu and I aren't weak either. Chun Gang said without blushing at all. In fact, that was what he thought. Besides, the Night Dark tribe has many powerful masters. It's not wise to be our enemy. Brother Chen, don't talk nonsense with him. Just kill him, Yang Xian said with hatred. His ranking had dropped because of Chumu. Now he couldn't go back. Senior Brother Chen, Senior Brother Yang is right. Let's just kill him to vent the hatred in our hearts. Xiao Minglei shouted. Shut up. Chun Gang frowned and scolded. He then looked at Chumu. This matter must be settled. You have 2 choices. First, compensate us with 200 strands of first rank void aura. With your current strength, obtaining 200 strands of first rank void aura isn't difficult. Second, let us kill you once. I want to kill him with my own hands, Yang Xian said. I want to kill him with my own hands twice, Qiu Minglei said. If I had chosen the second option, wouldn't I have died 3 times at once? Hearing this, Chumu immediately let out a smile and said, Not far away, the onlookers whispered. Choose one of the 2, Chin Gang said in a loud and clear voice. I'll also give you 2 choices, Chumu said. What choice? Chin Gang and the others were puzzled. The onlookers were also puzzled. First, take your people and move to the side. In the future, don't provoke me, and don't provoke the 5 Element sect. We'll live in peace. Chu Mu said slowly. Chin Gang and the others' faces changed. Second, let's fight. Who lives and who dies depends on strength. Let's fight. What's the use of talking without fighting? The onlookers knew that this matter had nothing to do with them. Naturally, they hoped that a conflict would break out. At least, it could be used as entertainment after a life and death battle. Ignoring those who wanted to see the world in chaos, Chin Gang's face turned gloomy. A pressing pressure spread out from his body. His eyes were as big as a bull's, staring at Chumu fiercely. It was as if he wanted to eat Chumu. I choose the third choice. Chen Gang grinned, revealing his white teeth. There seemed to be a cold light flashing in his eyes. We'll kill you. At the same time his voice rang out, Chen Gang unsheathed his sword. With a whistling sound, the dark brown sword light was like a waterfall that swept across the sky and heavily slashed towards Chumu. It was powerful and heavy, capable of splitting mountains with one slash. It had to be said that Chen Gang was tall and strong, and he looked a little rough. No one expected him to be so insidious. While talking, he suddenly pulled out his sword. Moreover, it was a first-grade sword technique. It was obvious that he wanted to kill Chumu with one sword move. Under normal circumstances, even if he wanted to make a move, he would do it after talking. If it was someone else, they might have been attacked by Chen Gang. However, Chumu's reaction was fast. When Chen Gang pulled out his sword and slashed down, he reacted. In fact, in addition to the experience of hundreds of battles and the intuition that was tempered by life and death situations, there was also a very important relationship, and that was the speed of thinking. The faster one's thinking, the faster one's reaction would be. A person, even if he was experienced in hundreds of battles, if his thinking wasn't fast enough, he would feel a little powerless in the face of a sudden and fast attack even if he wanted to avoid it. If one's thinking was fast enough, they would be able to make better judgments and come up with corresponding strategies in the face of danger. If one's thinking was slow, it would be difficult to make judgments. If one was decisive and didn't know how to deal with it, all of this would happen and be completed in an extremely short period of time. The speed of one's thinking was directly related to the strength of one's spiritual energy. The improvement of one's cultivation, the comprehension of sword intent, or the comprehension of the power of heaven and earth were all direct ways to develop one's spiritual potential and strengthen one's spiritual energy. Chu Mu's soul was originally much stronger than the average person's, and his spiritual energy was also much stronger. Furthermore, he was at the second heavenly layer of gaseous cultivation and had also comprehended the power of gold and the power of fire. His thinking speed was much faster than Chungang's. Chungang unsheathed his sword and executed a first-grade sword technique. Yang Xian, Qiu Minglei, and the others also quickly unsheathed their swords and stabbed over from the side. Faced with this sudden attack, a smile flashed across Chu Mu's face. His thoughts quickly turned, and he had already thought of a way to deal with it in an instant. Chungang's first-grade sword technique was powerful and heavy, as if it could split a mountain in half. It contained sword intent and the power of earth. His sword was a first-grade void spirit sword. The blade was wider, heavier, and longer, suitable for a tall and strong person like him. The onlookers widened their eyes, as if they could see the scene of Chu Mu being cut in half. In an instant, they only saw a dazzling and demonic red light blossom. It was incomparably violent, as if a strong light had suddenly appeared in the darkness. Their eyes trembled, and they couldn't help but squint and cover their eyes with their hands. As a result, they missed the most exciting scene. Unsheathing the scarlet blood sword, Chu Mu didn't use any sword technique. His speed instantly exploded as he charged towards Chungang, even faster than Chungang's sword. Chungang only felt a flash of violent red light in front of his eyes, like a thunderbolt flying past. That red light still remained in his eyes, but the tip of the sword had already slashed his neck. His footsteps paused, and two more red lights slashed towards Yang Xian and Qiu Minglei. Instant kill. Chapter 1229. When the geniuses in the crowd put down their hands and looked over, they saw a shocking scene. Chungang's head flew up into the sky, and his tall body slowly fell to the ground. Qiu Minglei and Yang Xian fell down from the wooden bridge as if they had been fed to the fish. These people immediately regretted missing the most exciting scene, but there was nothing they could do. Who told the demonic red light to suddenly bloom at that time to be too violent and too dazzling? It caught them off guard and made their eyes hurt. They simply didn't see how Chu Mu killed Chungang and the other two. He raised his hand and put it down. In less than 3 breaths of time, Chungang and the other two were killed. After all, Chungang was ranked 3rd on the Galaxy Genius list. For no reason, a feeling of terror arose in these people's hearts. When they looked at Chu Mu, their gazes carried traces of reverence. Chu Mu walked forward. The other members of the Night Dark Hall were all frightened and stepped back to make way for him. They didn't dare to stop him at all. As expected of the person at the top of the rankings, when Chu Mu walked into the Night Underworld tribe, someone softly sighed. It's too scary. Chungang is no match for him. I guess Zhu Tiantong is no match for him either. Chu Mu is the real number 1 in the Night Dark tribe. I wonder how Chu Mu compares to the number 1 in the other tribes. He's definitely not weak. He's already ranked 9th on the Heaven Ascension list. Ah, I thought I was a once-in-a-century genius, but compared to Chu Mu, I'm just mediocre. When Chu Mu left, he took Chungang's spiritual sword with him, except for the original black iron sword or the red blood sword, which had mutated from the original black iron sword. The other swords would fall when the person died. However, as long as one was willing to pay the corresponding price when reviving, such as void chi, they would have a chance to retrieve the sword. Thus, the void spirit sword in Chu Mu's hand disappeared. Chu Mu didn't care. A mere first-grade void spirit sword was far inferior to the scarlet blood sword. Moreover, the shape and style of the sword wasn't what he liked. Instead of returning to the wooden house, he went straight to the restaurant. The restaurant was much more luxurious than the small restaurant. After eating dry food for 2 or 3 days, Chu Mu felt that his mouth was about to explode. He really wanted to have a good meal, and it was a delicious meal. Once they entered the restaurant, a friendly waiter came over to greet Chu Mu. He led Chu Mu to the second floor and sat by the window. There was no one on the second floor. In fact, there were no customers on the first floor either. There were very few natives in the Dark Knight tribe, and they were all people with status. For example, the shopkeeper of the bookstore, the shopkeeper of the sword shop, and so on. The restaurant served the geniuses who came here. However, at this stage, almost all of the geniuses were working hard to obtain more void chi. Normally, they would be willing to spend 1 strand of void chi to eat in a small restaurant. How could they come to a restaurant? Not long after, several dishes appeared on the table in front of him. There were 2 vegetarian dishes, 3 meat dishes, 3 big bowls of rice, and 5 steamed buns. Chu Mu didn't order soup. Instead, he ordered a jug of wine and enjoyed it. Who is that person? He actually went to a restaurant. A passerby saw Chu Mu sitting by the window and was immediately shocked. Unknowingly, Chu Mu became the center of attention again. He chewed and swallowed slowly, trying his best to break down the food and absorb the nutrients. After half an hour, Chu Mu was full, but his stomach didn't bulge. After paying 4 strands of void chi, the waiter warmly greeted him and left. Although it was a bit expensive, the food was indeed more delicious than the small restaurant. After leaving the restaurant, Chu Mu didn't directly return to the wooden house. Instead, he strolled in the direction of the small restaurant. His goal was to prepare some dry food. As for water, his jug was full. "Handsome young master, come in and have some fun." A few beauties dressed in different ways, pure, sweet, charming, or coquettish, stood in front of a building. They waved their sleeves, and a fragrance wafted in the air as they spoke to Chu Mu. This was a brothel. Chu Mu only glanced at them and didn't pay them any attention. Those brothel girls also didn't rush over to pester him. There were still 25 strands of void chi left. Chu Mu went to the small restaurant and spent 10 strands of void chi to get 5 days' worth of dry food. If it wasn't for the fact that it was inconvenient to bring too much, he would have brought more. Finally, there were still 15 strands of void chi left. After returning to his wooden house, Chu Mu placed the 15 strands of void chi on the table. The owner of the wooden house was himself. Other than himself, no one else could force their way in. First, he practiced intermediate footwork, intermediate movement, and intermediate swordsmanship. After that, he washed up and sat cross-legged on the bed to practice his inner chi. When he was ready to reflect on the 2 days of fighting, there was a knock on the door. It was Lin Yi. "Senior Lin, what's your cultivation?" Chu Mu saw Lin Yi at first glance and found that Lin Yi's aura seemed to be weak. "I had just heard that Chun Gang and Yang Xian wanted to find trouble with Junior Chu. Instead, they were killed by Chu Mu. Good job." Lin Yi's face revealed a satisfied smile as he said hatefully, "Senior Lin, you were killed?" Chu Mu asked. He could tell that Lin Yi cultivated both chi and blood. His cultivation of the first heavenly layer of body transformation had dropped because the blood and chi in his body was very weak. "Yes, I was killed by Zhu Tiantong. Junior Jiang and the others were also killed. They even threatened to kill anyone from the 5 Elements sect." Lin Yi said hatefully, "I came to find Junior Chu to tell you that if you meet anyone from the night hall outside, you should strike first and kill them without hesitation. It was because I hesitated that I didn't make the first move, so I lost the opportunity." Chu Mu had a little understanding of Lin Yi's character after several contacts. He was a little bit of a good person, but it wasn't very obvious. When he did things, he wasn't very decisive. If he didn't change this character, it wouldn't be good for him. Senior Lin, don't worry. Since they attacked our fellow disciples in the wilderness, I will make them regret it, Chu Mu said. Immediately he thought of something and said, Senior Lin, wait a moment. He turned and walked into the wooden house. He immediately came out with 15 strands of first-grade void energy in his hand. First-grade void energy is useless to me. Senior Lin, take it and restore your strength. Chu Mu handed the void energy in his hand to Lin Yi and said, I think Senior Lin knows his character. Sometimes it isn't a good thing. Whether Lin Yi accepted it or not was his business. However, he didn't accept Chu Mu's void energy. Senior brother, a first-rank void aura is indeed of no use to me, but it can help you recover faster, said Chu Mu. Lin Yi accepted the 15 strands of void energy. He was very grateful, but he didn't know how to express it. After chatting for a while, Lin Yi said goodbye. Chu Mu closed the wooden door and sat back on the bed. Zhu Tiantong, pray that I don't meet him, Xiaoqin muttered to himself. Then he cleared his mind and immersed himself in comprehending. Scene after scene of the battle replayed in his mind. Chu Mu slowly comprehended the process and details of each battle. He discovered his own inadequacies and saw if he could do better to improve his strength. This method seemed like a waste of time. However, it was actually very scary. Doing it once or twice or thrice, or even dozens of times was nothing. The effect was not obvious. However, after turning it into a habit, it would be very useful in the long run. After spending some time, Chu Mu finally finished comprehending. Then he recalled the night when he was on the huge rock. He saw a meteor streaking across the sky. After thinking for a while, he drew the scarlet blood sword and stabbed out. It was fast and ferocious, creating sparks. However, this attack did not succeed. Xiaoqin did not give up and continued working hard. At this moment, it was late at night. There were still about 6 hours before daybreak. About 20 or 30 breaths of time, he could stab out a sword. In total, he could stab out more than 800 to 1,000 swords. Chu Mu hoped to succeed in this period of time. Stab out, withdraw, think. Stab out again, withdraw and think. Stab out again, withdraw and think again. Stab after stab. After each stab, he would think a little and correct his inadequacies. Gradually, the speed of each stab seemed to be faster and more powerful. The friction between the sword and the air produced a stronger heat. It turned into a flame, about to burn. The air in the wooden house also gradually heated up. Time passed unknowingly. Fortunately, Chu Mu was now at the second heavenly layer of qi cultivation. His body transformation had reached the second layer of the second heavenly layer. He had sufficient physical strength and endurance. Otherwise, he would not have been able to stab out for such a long time. Chu Mu was working hard. Everyone else was also working hard. 3 years was not a long time. No one knew what would happen when the time came. It was precisely because they did not know that they felt more urgency, more pressure, and more motivation. The unknown could make people afraid, but it could also make people crazy. No one was willing to fall behind others. They would only be unable to catch up. For hours passed. Chu Mu had already stabbed out more than 600 times. Now, after a stab, he took even longer to think. He would only stab out once after about 60 breaths of time. Although the frequency was lower, every stab of his sword had more charm to it. Determination, perseverance, comprehension, effort. Chu Mu possessed all of these qualities. There was also a kind of pressure and motivation. In his mind, the scene of a meteor breaking through the sky flashed from time to time. The burning golden-red flames were so breathtaking. The stab of his sword was more and more in line with the scene of a meteor breaking through the sky. Every stab was a kind of accumulation. It was an accumulation of quantity. When the accumulation reached the limit, it would cause a qualitative change. Taking a deep breath, he lifted his sore arm. He was incomparably firm, incomparably sincere and incomparably focused. The scarlet blood, sword stabbed out. The demonic red converged into a line. The golden color was injected, and the power of the sword surged. The sword trembled violently, and the friction with the air was intense. The flame instantly ignited. The power of fire surged into the sword, causing the flame to become incomparably violent. This stab was like a meteor burning with golden red flames. It was extremely fast and breathtaking. It cut through the sky, tore through the darkness, and bombarded the wall of the wooden house. In the midst of the explosion, the entire wooden house trembled as if it was about to shatter. Successfully created a third-grade sword technique. You have received 4,000 genius points. A fleeting voice sounded, making Chu Mu ecstatic. Chapter 1230. First place on the Heaven Ascension list. Ancient Chaos Space Genius Points, 20,000. Second place on the Heaven Ascension list. Qin Aoxian Genius Points, 19,000. Third place on the Heaven Ascension list. Yangzhan Genius Points, 19,000. Fourth place on the Heaven Ascension list. Su Muji Genius Points, 17,000. Fifth place on the Heaven Ascension list. Chu Mu Genius Points, 17,000. From the 9th place to the 5th place, a rise of 4 places caused a new round of shock. All the great emperors focused their attention on the name, secretly guessing where it came from. As for the elders of the main divine hall, they were laughing so hard that their beards were sticking up and their faces were glowing. Observe the night meteor streaking across the sky. Ignite yourself and blossom with the splendor of life. This move will be named Night Meteor. In the wooden hut, Chu Mu named his newly created third-rank sword technique, Night Meteor, like a bright meteor that flew across the night sky. The Night Meteor sword technique contained some of the essence of the armor-piercing sword technique, but the armor-piercing sword technique focused on tearing through defenses, which was rather outstanding in this aspect. The Night Meteor sword technique focused more on speed and an instantaneous burst of power, and it also contained terrifying heat. In terms of power, Night Meteor sword technique was naturally more powerful. Creating a first-rank sword technique would give him 1,000 genius points. Creating a second-rank sword technique would give him 2,000 genius points. Creating a third-rank sword technique would give him 4,000 genius points instead of 3,000. It seemed that when one's cultivation broke through to the third heaven, he would also get 4,000 genius points. Chu Mu had improved so much and obtained so many genius points, but he was only 5th place on the Heaven Ascension list. He could not help but be surprised by the talents of those who were ranked higher than him. Extraordinary talents. Perhaps they were not as good as him in terms of sword essence, but they were better than him in some aspects. He did not feel depressed. Instead, he felt slightly excited. There was still some time. Chu Mu put away his sword and calmed himself down. He used the beginner Qi training manual to recover his inner Qi and physical strength. For someone at the second firmament of Qi refinement, the primary Qi refinement technique was no longer that useful. However, it still had a certain effect on recovery. A wisp of dawn broke through the eastern horizon, like a lively spirit announcing the arrival of a new day. The geniuses left the wooden houses one after another and entered the wilderness to begin a new day of cultivation. As they left, there was a flurry of discussion, especially about what happened yesterday evening. In other words, Chu Mu insta-killing Qin Gang and the others. There were also people discussing the matter of people entering the restaurant to spend money. Afterwards, they discovered that it was the same person. Immediately, there were people who were endlessly envious, while there were also people who were endlessly jealous. Thinking about it, while they were still risking their lives for an extra strand of level 1 illusory energy, others had already used it to spend in restaurants. This difference was really indescribable. If there was such a thing as a nouveau riche in this world, someone would probably rush up to hug his thigh and shout, "Nouveau riche, let's be friends." After his inner Qi was completely recovered, so was his physical strength. However, at this time, the sun had already risen. There was no other way. Without more advanced Qi training manuals or elixirs, the recovery speed with the beginner Qi training manual was a bit slow. Carrying the red blood sword, 5 days' worth of food on his shoulder, and a kettle full of water on his waist, Chumu opened the door. A ray of golden light shone in and fell on his handsome face. He strode out, closed the door, and headed for the Dark Knight tribe. At this time, all the geniuses had already left the Dark Knight tribe. He started to run faster and faster. Soon, he rushed out of the Dark Knight tribe, crossed the wooden bridge, and went straight into the wilderness. He quickly headed for the Wolf Valley. When he entered the Wolf Valley, Chumu found many traces. Obviously, the Wolf Valley had been known by many people. There were quite a lot of red-eyed wolves living here. If they scattered, as long as he tried hard to find them, he could always find them. The red-eyed wolves were no longer attractive to Chumu. He ran directly into the depths of the outer valley and rushed into the passage of the inner valley. He found that there were also other people's footprints in the passage. However, Chumu was not worried at all. At present, except for him, it would not be easy for others to kill a level 2 virtual beast. Not long after entering the inner valley, Chumu saw a group of geniuses. There were 4 of them in total. Each of them emitted a strong aura. The 4 of them were fighting a fierce battle with an ironback wolf. The ironback wolf was a level 2 virtual beast, while the 4 of them were in the first celestial realm. In addition, they were holding black iron swords. Even if they were supported by sword intent and a kind of force of heaven and earth, it was difficult to cause any obvious damage to the ironback wolf. They could only attack its weak points, such as its eyes. The ironback wolf protected its eyes very well. It would not be easy to attack its eyes. If it were not for the fact that the 4 of them were not weak and had excellent cooperation, they would have been killed by the ironback wolf. With a glance, Chumu knew that it would be difficult for the 4 of them to kill the ironback wolf. Even if they could kill it in the end, they would have exhausted most of their strength. Chumu's appearance startled the 4 of them. They thought that he was going to snatch the ironback wolf. As they were slightly distracted, their joint attack was broken by the ironback wolf, and one of them was immediately injured. When the ironback wolf raised its claws and was about to tear the injured person apart, a dazzling and demonic red light flashed through the air like lightning. With a poochie sound, the ironback wolf's mournful cry rang out. With your strength, you might as well hunt the red-eyed wolves in the outer valley. At the same time, a voice rang out in their ears. When they could see clearly, they saw a figure floating into the distance. As for the ferocious ironback wolf, its front limbs had been chopped off. It was crippled and could only wait to be slaughtered. So strong. All right, after killing this ironback wolf and obtaining the virtual Qi, let's return to the outer valley. After severing the ironback wolf's restraint, the scarlet blood sword once again absorbed some blood. In that instant, Chumu felt the scarlet blood sword tremble, as if it wanted to express some kind of emotion. It thirsted for blood. Chumu knew that this was a sign that the scarlet blood sword was about to evolve. Once the scarlet blood sword evolves into a 3rd-grade virtual spirit sword, I'll go kill the ironback wolf king. A sharp light flashed in Chumu's eyes. The scorching sun hung high in the sky, but Chumu was not afraid. He quickly advanced. Along the way, he saw other people besieging the ironback wolf, but they were also having a difficult time. However, they were a bit better off than the previous 4. Chumu did not pay any attention to them. He also disdained to snatch the ironback wolf. He went deeper into the inner valley. Finally, no one else came here. When he encountered an ironback wolf, he unsheathed the scarlet blood sword and insta-killed it. Every time it absorbed blood, the scarlet blood sword would tremble as if it was expressing some kind of emotion. The emotion of thirsting for more blood. Chumu also directly absorbed the 2nd-grade virtual Qi. Although one strand could only increase his strength by 100 Jin, it was better than nothing. As long as he killed the Ironback Wolf King, he would go hunt for a third-grade virtual beast and use the third-grade virtual chi to increase his virtual chi cultivation. Slash. The Scarlet Blood Sword continuously absorbed blood, and Chumu also continuously absorbed the second-grade virtual chi. With another slash, he killed an Ironback Wolf and absorbed all 5 strands of second-grade virtual chi. The Scarlet Blood Sword also absorbed the Ironback Wolf's blood essence. Suddenly, the Scarlet Blood Sword trembled. A sword cry was emitted from the Scarlet Blood Sword, melodious and pleasing to the ear. The demonic red light on the Scarlet Blood Sword was restrained. The blood-red light on the sword's spine became brighter and brighter. It flowed on the sword's spine and gradually spread out, covering the entire sword. The originally faint red color of the sword's body gradually deepened. The body of the sword trembled again, and the red light instantly burst out like a red sun. The light was pure, flawless, and demonic, but it quickly converged. The spine of the sword was still deep red, and the body of the sword was still light red. However, the color was slightly deeper than before, and the entire sword was emitting an even more powerful aura. The Scarlet Blood Sword had finally broken through its shackles and become a third-grade virtual spirit sword. The sword's body was even tougher, and the sword's edge and sword's tip were even sharper. With a gentle wave, without using any strength, it felt as if it could cut through everything. Chumu prepared to find an Ironback Wolf to test the sharpness of the third-grade virtual spirit sword, Scarlet Blood Sword. The result did not disappoint him. A rank 3 Void Spirit Sword could break through the defense of a rank 3 Void Beast. No matter how powerful the Ironback Blue Wolf was, it was only an elite rank 2 Void Beast after all. Without any support, the sword could break through the tough skin of the Ironback Blue Wolf. If it was supported by the sword intent, its sharpness would be shocking, and it would be sliced in half. The current Scarlet Blood Sword should be enough to break through the Ironback Wolf King's defense. Chumu thought to himself. After entering the inner valley of the Wolf Valley, Chumu killed a few more Ironback Wolves. After absorbing the second-grade virtual chi, his body cultivation had reached the 4th layer of the second firmament, and he possessed a terrifying strength of 28,000 jin. Chumu also saw the Ironback Wolf King. He didn't know if it was because of its nature, but the Ironback Wolf King was also standing high up like the Scarlet-Eyed Wolf King. This Ironback Wolf King's body was huge, even bigger than the Scarlet-Eyed Wolf King. However, it didn't look bloated at all. Instead, it gave people a strong and vigorous feeling, as if strength and speed coexisted. The Ironback Wolf King's appearance wasn't much different from the Ironback Wolf's, but it looked more ferocious. Its back was more protruding, giving people a terrifying feeling. In fact, the Ironback Wolf's back could also be brought back to the Dark Knight tribe and sold to the sword forging shop. It could be used to forge swords, but without spatial rings or other storage treasures, it would be difficult to bring them back. Even if it could be brought back, it would only be 1 or 2. Moreover, it would be troublesome to bring them back before disappearing. The Ironback Wolf King was lying on top of the boulder with its eyes closed, as if it was in a deep sleep. Below it, there were also many Ironback Blue Wolves and strong Ironback Wolves. There were a total of 16 Ironback Blue Wolves and over 100 strong Ironback Wolves. These Ironback Wolves and strong Ironback Wolves seemed to be the Ironback Wolf King's bodyguards. This scene wasn't out of Chumu's expectations. He silently compared and calculated. With his current strength, he wanted to see if he could contend against the more than 100 strong Ironback Wolves and the 16 Ironback Wolves. He also had to take into account the even stronger Ironback Wolf King. Chapter 1231. Some people left the inner valley while others re-entered. After some calculations, Chumu realized that with his current strength, it was impossible for him to fight against so many Ironback Wolves. Even if he didn't count the Ironback Wolf King, Just the 16 ironback blue wolves and the hundreds of strong ironback wolves were enough to tear him to pieces. Since that's the case, let's go with the Battle King. Chu-Mu thought to himself. He leapt up and unsheathed the scarlet blood sword. A bewitching and dazzling red light filled the air, as if a scarlet bolt of lightning tore through the sky. Its astonishing sharpness pierced through the void, pressing down on the ironback wolf king several thousand meters away. Chu-Mu's body emitted a sharp aura, like a sword soaring into the sky, shocking the wind and clouds. In an instant, all of the ironback wolves looked at Chu-Mu. One by one, they crouched down, twitched their noses, and revealed their terrifying canine teeth. Sharp and cold, they let out a low, oppressive, and frightening roar, like muffled thunder, from the depths of their throats. The ironback wolves were all waiting for their king's order. As soon as the order was given, they would madly rush over and pounce, tearing this upright creature that dared to challenge the Wolf King's prestige to pieces. The ironback Wolf King also stood up. Its enormous aura was awakened, spreading out from its body and exploding like a storm. It collided with Chu-Mu's sharpness from several thousand meters away, facing each other from a distance. Shaking its head, the Wolf King whistled and stretched its body. Its aura grew stronger and stronger. Suddenly, the ironback Wolf King raised its head and let out a long howl toward the sky. Its howl shook Tian, as if it could shatter the stars. Leaping down, the ironback wolves parted, revealing a path for the Wolf King to pass through. Chu-Mu also jumped down and walked towards the ironback Wolf King, step by step. With every step he took, the aura on his body would condense and become stronger. As the auras clashed, the air resounded with firecracker-like sounds. The ironback Wolf King sprinted madly, turning into a dark blue bolt of lightning. It was abnormally fast, flashing through the air and rapidly closing in on Chu-Mu. As its terrifying fiendish aura churned, it vaguely condensed into the silhouette of an ironback wolf. It was incomparably large, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws as it roared and charged at Chu-Mu, as if wanting to smash Chu-Mu into pieces. The ironback Wolf King was actually able to materialize its aura. This was a sign that its use of aura had reached a certain level. It was able to intimidate targets whose aura was weaker than its own. Even targets whose aura was about the same as its own, but did not use it well, would still be affected slightly. If one's aura was affected, one's mind would be oppressed. If one's mind was oppressed, one's thoughts would be affected as well, resulting in a decrease in one's operating speed. With a decrease in one's thinking speed, it would be easy for one to be at a disadvantage in battle. The ironback Wolf King's materialization of aura was only at the entry level, but it made Chu-Mu's eyes light up. All along, he had not been outstanding in the use of aura, nor had he specially studied it. Therefore, it was very mediocre. Seeing it today had instantly opened up his mind. In terms of aura, Chu-Mu felt that he was not inferior to the ironback Wolf King. It was just that there was a gap in the application of aura. This gap immediately made him feel a trace of suppression. His mind was also slightly affected, and the operation of his thoughts was slightly slowed. His sword intent condensed, consciously guiding his aura, like 100 rivers flowing into the sea. It contracted, then suddenly burst out, slashing out with the scarlet blood sword. Suddenly, a faintly discernible, invisible sword appeared above Chu-Mu. It was incomparably huge, and with a single slash, it slashed towards the ironback Wolf King's aura. Chu-Mu's comprehension was monstrous, and his control of his own aura was also very shocking. In the past, it was just that he did not have the idea or the knowledge. Now that he saw it, a flash of inspiration appeared in his mind. With the intention, he quickly grasped it and reached the entry level of aura materialization. But compared to the ironback Wolf King, there was still a gap. The aura sword shattered, but the ironback Wolf King's giant wolf aura only weakened a little. It condensed again, and another slash came out, this time more condensed and stronger. It shattered again, and a third slash came out. This time, it was even more condensed and stronger. There was no wind, no lightning, but one could vaguely hear the sound of wind and thunder. Slash! The giant sword and the giant wolf shattered at the same time and dissipated. Before the fourth giant sword could be condensed, the Ironback Wolf King and Chu Mu had already closed in on each other. The Ironback Wolf King abruptly leapt forward. Its sharp claws extended outwards, as if a sharp sword had been unsheathed, bringing forth a heart-palpitating cold glint. From a few meters away, Chu Mu could feel the bone-piercing sharpness of the Ironback Wolf King's claws. When it opened its mouth, its canine teeth protruded, crisscrossing, and could bite through anything. Chu Mu knew that the wolf shadow armor on his body couldn't even block the Ironback Blue Wolf's claws, let alone the Ironback Wolf King's claws. He also didn't forget that the Ironback Wolf King possessed beast power and had mastered beast skills. The power of that beast skill could only be stronger than the Scarlet-Eyed Wolf King's flame claw. Facing the Ironback Wolf King's claws, the Scarlet Blood sword drew a perfect arc of light. It was like a thunderbolt that tore through the void, like a sudden clap of thunder, like the killing shadow of a gale, incomparably swift and violent, with a touch of demonic beauty. It first sliced, then stabbed. With a wave of its claws, the Ironback Wolf King's battle skills surpassed the Scarlet-Eyed Wolf King's. In an instant, the sharp claws and the Scarlet Blood sword collided many times, sending out countless sparks, as bright as fireworks on a summer night. The two figures crossed each other. The Ironback Wolf King turned around and bit, while Chu Mu turned around and slashed out, hitting the canine teeth. Having mastered intermediate movement and movement techniques, Chu Mu's figure and footwork had become more nimble, faster, and more flexible. The Ironback Wolf King's strength was enormous. Every wave of its claws could be fatal. Its speed was extremely fast, and its reaction was nimble. It engaged in an intense battle with Chu Mu, attacking, dodging, and counterattacking. The other Ironback wolves were closely watching the battle between Chu Mu and their king. This was a battle that belonged to their king, and they had no right to interfere. The two claws tore through the air, intersecting with a cold glint. It was as sharp as a cold blade, capable of tearing through all toughness. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Red light exploded, like rainbows piercing through the sun, colliding with the cold glint time and time again, shattering and splashing, resplendent and demonic. Violent collisions, tyrannical recoil, and frightening shockwaves spread out, turning into formless ripples that instantly spread out. The earth was shattered, as if it had been slashed by an invisible blade. The Ironback Wolf King retreated 2 steps, and Chu Mu also retreated 2 steps, dispersing the recoil. Seizing the opportunity, the sword that had bounced up due to the recoil instantly slashed down, burning with flames. Grade 2 sword technique, double flame annihilation. Just as the flaming sword was about to strike the Ironback Wolf King, the power of fire was poured into it, forming a second flame. With a low roar, the Ironback Wolf King sensed danger. A terrifying aura suddenly erupted from its body, as if a peerless, ferocious beast hidden in its body had awoken, erupting with terrifying might. The Ironback Wolf King's sharp claws were infused with beast power, emitting a cold azure light. They were incomparably sharp as they tore through the air. The double flame annihilation clashed with the wind demon claw. The power of fire and wind exploded, and the tyrannical power spread out once more, causing the Ironback Wolf King and Chu Mu to be pushed back once more. The sand and stones on the ground seemed to have been scorched by the high temperature, and cracks even appeared on the ground. The Ironback Wolf King's grasp of timing was even above the Scarlet-Eyed Wolf King's, making Chu Mu feel like he had met his match. With a swift leap, the Ironback Wolf King soared into the air, blocking out the scorching sun, and pounced down. Raising his head, the Ironback Wolf King exerted strength in his legs, exploding forth. Like an arrow leaving the bow, the Ironback Wolf King soared into the sky. They clashed again, and the Ironback Wolf King was pushed back. They were separated by a dozen meters, facing each other from afar. Their auras locked onto each other, but they did not immediately attack. Instead, they were searching for an opening. The atmosphere became incomparably tense. Every molecule in the air became lively, as if they were cheering for each other. Wolf howls resounded. Those were the Ironback Wolves cheering for their king, causing the Ironback Wolf King's aura to become even stronger. Above the Ironback Wolf King, the formless aura condensed once more, forming a huge illusory image of the Ironback Wolf. It was much clearer than before. A tyrannical aura continuously rose from Chumu's body, condensing into a huge sword in the air. It was like a heavenly sword hovering in the air. Compared to before, Chumu's use of aura had become even more profound. Previously, he had needed the help of the sword in his hand, but now he did not need it. Furthermore, he was not inferior to the Ironback Wolf King. The huge wolf's aura and the huge sword's aura were separated by a dozen meters. Terrifying auras constantly spread out, colliding with each other. There seemed to be sparks in the air. The Ironback Wolf King slowly moved forward. The creature that was walking upright in front of it possessed great strength. It was so excited that its blood seemed to be boiling. Its back was slightly moving up and down like waves, regardless of whether it was the scarlet-eyed wolf or the Ironback Wolf. They were both proud and aloof creatures. They thirsted for battle, thirsted for stronger battles. Adjusting his breathing and adjusting his aura, Chumu's mind became highly focused. Holding the scarlet blood sword tightly in his hand, an excited smile unconsciously appeared on his face. The powerful Ironback Wolf King. This was his true opponent. Only such an opponent could help him improve. His breathing became even and long. A tyrannical energy flowed through his body in waves. His pupils contracted slightly. Erupt! The Ironback Wolf King charged at Chumu once more, like a dark blue lightning bolt. Chumu also charged at the Ironback Wolf King. It was as if he and his sword had become one, turning into a demonic red. Collision, collision, collision. Collision after collision. It was a collision of strength and speed. It was a collision of skill and timing. It was a collision of fangs and claws against the scarlet blood sword. Seizing the opportunity, Chumu once again displayed his swordsmanship. His sword swiftly pierced out. The power of metal poured into the tip of the sword, condensing into a point of coldness. Rank 2 swordsmanship, armor break. A terrifying and ferocious aura erupted from the Ironback Wolf King's body once again. Its iron spine instantly trembled, and like a wriggling dragon, it lit up with a dark green glow. The glow was like water, and gradually spread from the iron spine to every part of its body. It covered its entire body, its head, its limbs, and even its claws. Chapter 1232. The sharp blade that could pierce through the air accurately hit the Wolf King's forehead, but the dark green light covered the Wolf King's entire body first. A clanging sound was heard. Chumu felt a strong resistance that blocked the tip of the scarlet blood sword. The tip of the scarlet blood sword was only able to penetrate the Wolf King's skin a little before it could go any further. The enormous collision of power caused the scarlet blood sword to bend. Chumu's wrist shook, and he once again exerted force. The tyrannical force was like a torrential tide as it crashed into the scarlet blood sword. Instantly, it caused the scarlet blood sword to bounce straight, and the sound of air shattering rang out. The second wave of force caused the scarlet blood sword to thrust forward again. Just as it was about to penetrate the Wolf King's skin, the Wolf King had already raised its claws. A dark green light gathered as it swung its claws. For green wind blades sliced through the air and came for the kill. Second level beast skill, Wind Demon's Claw. Chumu quickly pulled out his sword and dodged quickly. At the same time, he swung his sword and skillfully changed the trajectory of the wind blades that were difficult to dodge. The Wolf King's body was covered in a layer of dark green light. The light was so condensed that it looked like a layer of energy armor that covered the Wolf King's entire body. Second-level beast skill, Iron Spine Armor. Wind Demon's Claw was an offensive beast skill, while Iron Spine Armor was a defensive beast skill. It was more valuable than offensive beast skills as it could also block attacks from second-level beast skills or sword skills. The Ironback Wolf King seemed to have grown in size after being covered by the Ironback armor. However, it was still not bloated and was still as agile as before. Its defense had also increased to a whole new level, surpassing that of a Tier 3 Beast King. Ordinary second-level swordsmanship would not be damaged at all against Iron Spine armor. Although Chu Mu's armor-piercing sword was a second-level swordsmanship, it focused on breaking through defense. Moreover, it was only able to penetrate the Wolf King's skin because it was a third-level ethereal sword. If the Wolf King did not counterattack with Wind Demon's Claw, the second attack would be enough to break through the armor's defense and injure the Wolf King. In fact, the armor-piercing swordsmanship was only at the beginner level because the sword, will, metal force, and vibrational force were all at the beginner level. The swordsmanship formed by these three forces was naturally at the beginner level as well. If these three forces were improved, the swordsmanship's power would also increase. If the armor-piercing sword art was perfected, its power would be much stronger than a rank 3 beginner sword art. Chu Mu would never have thought that the Ironback Wolf King would have two beast skills. Beast energy surged through the Ironback Wolf King's body as it swung its claws. Dark green light turned into wind blades. There were 8 of them in total, and they came from different angles in a straight trajectory, tearing through the void. Chu Mu activated the wolf shadow armor, and the wolf patterns on the leather armor lit up. A light and nimble energy flowed through his entire body, increasing his speed. Chu Mu executed his movement technique and drew his sword. He passed through the gap between the 2 wind blades. He circulated all the energy in his body once again. His eyes instantly became blazing. A sharp light flashed past like a shooting star in the night sky. The scarlet blood sword stabbed out with its fastest speed. With the support of the sword will and gold force, vibrational energy surged out, creating a powerful driving force that caused the speed of the sword to reach its peak. The friction between the sword and the air was also maximized. As if a flame had been ignited, it instantly sprang up, burning fiercely on the sword. With the support of the fire force, the flame became even more vigorous, shrinking into a single streak. All sorts of energy gathered on the scarlet blood sword. The scarlet blood sword seemed to have disappeared. The surrounding light seemed to have been absorbed, dimming as if night had descended. This feeling gave the Ironback Wolf King the feeling that sometimes when it lay on a boulder and occasionally raised its head to look at the sky, all it saw was blackness and a resplendent shooting star streaking through the sky. It was breathtaking and incomparable. Grade 3 sword technique, Night Meteor. This was the first time Chu Mu had used this sword technique in actual combat after creating it. Its power was yet to be tested. The sword light was like a shooting star in the night sky. It was beautiful, violent, and incomparably swift. It could not be dodged and could only be met head-on. This sword still pierced towards the Ironback Wolf King's forehead. Night Meteor contained the sword will, vibrational energy, gold force, and fire force. It also had a slight armor-piercing property. With a boom, Night Meteor struck the Ironback Wolf King's forehead, the toughest part of its body. With a loud explosion, a terrifying, demonic red flame surged from the head to the body, like a fiery beast from the abyss, wanting to devour the Ironback Wolf King. Under the terrifying explosive force, with a trace of armor-piercing property, it forcefully broke a tiny crack in the Ironback light armor. Just this one crack was enough. The tip of the scarlet blood sword pierced into the Ironback Wolf King's forehead. It stopped for a moment in the skull, allowing Chu Mu to feel the hardness and the strong resistance. This was because the iron-back light armor had already neutralized part of the night meteor's power. With a shake of his arm and a flick of his wrist, a new force was generated before the old force had dissipated. There seemed to be a faint cracking sound, difficult and obscure. The scarlet blood sword pierced straight through the skull between the eyebrows, straight into the brain and into the neck. All the light disappeared, returning to a dull and silent state. The iron-back wolf king's body trembled. It waved its sharp claws with difficulty, wanting to retaliate. With a flick of his wrist, the sword trembled slightly. Intense pain, as if the iron-back wolf king's soul had been torn apart, its raised claws falling limply. Death. With the death of the iron-back wolf king, the other iron-back wolves all let out mournful whimpers. However, they did not dare to attack Chu-Mu because they were momentarily stunned. He pulled out the sword. There was no blood because the iron-back wolf king's blood had been completely absorbed by the scarlet blood sword. Strands of ethereal chi floated up from the iron-back wolf king's corpse. There were a total of 20 strands of second-grade ethereal chi, 1 third-grade ethereal chi, and 2 balls of light. Of the balls of light, 1 was transparent, while the other was blue. Chu-Mu did not need to rest. This time was different from the last time. Last time, he had gone through an intense battle to kill the scarlet-eyed wolf king. He had exhausted all his strength and only managed to kill it with light injuries. That time there was no protection, no speed enhancement, no ethereal sword, and only 1 sword technique. This time he had cultivated both his chi and chi to the second firmament. The wolf shadow armor increased speed. The wolf shadow shoes increased speed. The third-grade ethereal sword, scarlet blood sword, was shockingly sharp. The second-grade blazing double kill and armor piercing, and the third-grade night meteor. He had also mastered an intermediate sword technique, an intermediate movement technique, and an intermediate movement technique. Although the iron-back wolf king was strong, Chu-Mu was stronger. Although he had not exhausted all his strength, he had used up most of it. There was not much left. He did not rest and moved quickly. First, he grabbed the blue ball of light and absorbed it. Then he immediately grabbed the transparent ball of light. A piece of information appeared in his mind. There was a figure sitting cross-legged. Red dots and red lines appeared on his body, as if there was energy flowing around him. Intermediate chi refining formula. An intermediate chi refining formula worth 1,000 strands of second-grade ethereal chi. The transparent ball of light shattered, and a navy blue ring appeared in his hand. On the ring, there were engravings of iron-back wolves. Second-grade ethereal weapon, iron-back ring. The iron-back ring could activate the iron-back armor once a day to increase one's defense. Too bad it's not a spatial ring. Chu-Mu sighed. Compared to the iron-back ring, he wanted a spatial ring more. With a roll, he collected all 20 strands of second-grade ethereal chi and 1 strand of third-grade ethereal chi, and left quickly. With a leap, he was far away from the pack of iron-back wolves. Looking around, he sat cross-legged and circulated the intermediate chi refining formula to recover his inner chi. His physical strength was also recovering on its own. The effect of the intermediate chi refining formula was several times better than that of the beginner chi refining formula. Chu-Mu could feel his inner chi recovering rapidly. 2 hours later, his inner chi recovered, and so did his physical strength. Only then did Chu-Mu absorb and refine the 20 strands of second-grade ethereal chi and 1 strand of third-grade ethereal chi. In an instant, Chu-Mu's physique was strengthened by 1.5 levels. His strength increased by 3,000 caddies, reaching 31,000 caddies. With a leap, he brandished his sword. Amidst the demonic red light, the sound of the sword reverberated. Leaving behind a trail of dust, he charged towards the iron-back wolves. The iron-back blue wolves and iron-back wolves reacted one after another. Seeing Chu-Mu charging towards them, they subconsciously retreated in fear. If they were not afraid and swarmed together, they would definitely cause a lot of trouble for Chu Mu. They might even kill Chu Mu. However, because Chu Mu had killed their king in front of them, it was a deterrent. For a certain period of time, they would feel afraid. If they were afraid, they would not dare to swarm him, and they would not be able to use their full strength. Kill, kill, kill. Kill, kill, kill. One by one, the ironback wolves were killed. Strands of ethereal chi floated up from their corpses. The red blood sword continued to absorb blood, becoming more and more demonic. It was constantly accumulating strength in preparation for the next evolution. The third grade ethereal sword was incomparably sharp. Even without using the sword will or metal force, it could easily kill the ironback wolves, reducing Chu Mu's energy consumption to a minimum. The deaths of one ironback wolf after another angered the other ironback blue wolves. They surrounded Chu Mu, but it was already too late. Most of the ironback wolves had already been killed by Chu Mu. There were only 30 or so left, and the threat they posed to Chu Mu had decreased by at least half. With the support of the sword will, the red sword light pierced through the air like a tiger in a flock of sheep, unstoppable. 16 ironback blue wolves and over 100 strong ironback wolves had all died under Chu Mu's sword. Their corpses were strewn all over the field. It was a shocking sight. Strands of ethereal chi floated above the corpses. With a sweep of Chu Mu, there were a total of 200 strands. With a leap, he landed on the boulder where the ironback wolf king was lying. Chu Mu sat down cross-legged and once again circulated the intermediate chi training technique to recover his inner chi. His physical strength also recovered on its own. After recovering, Chu Mu began to absorb the second-grade ethereal chi. Every strand of second-grade ethereal chi could increase one's strength by 100 kilograms. 200 strands of second-grade ethereal chi could increase one's strength by 20,000 kilograms. After Chu Mu absorbed 90 strands, his body cultivation had reached the peak of the 9th level of the second heavenly layer. The remaining 110 strands were all converted into inner chi, causing his inner chi cultivation to soar to the 5th level of the second heavenly layer. At this point, Chu Mu's strength had increased by a lot. If he fought with the ironback wolf king again, it would be easier for him to kill it. Even if the ironback wolf king went berserk, it would still not be his match.